Story 1. Parents chose my sister's housewarming party over my wedding because I refused to invite her after she punched me. Now my grandparents are walking me down the aisle instead. For a very long time, I have always known that my parents loved my older sister Vicky more than me. She was the planned child, while I was the result of an accidental pregnancy just 10 months later. They probably didn't even want me but decided to keep the pregnancy anyway. My mother's parents had passed away before I was even born, but my dad's parents were very much alive, so they took on a significant role in my upbringing. Grandma and Grandpa were the ones in my life providing the love and support that I often felt lacking from my own parents. I remember so many instances when my parents would leave me behind with my grandparents and only take my sister for trips. When I was young, I didn't mind because it was fun living with my grandparents, but as I started to grow up, like when I was 6 or 7 years old, I realized just how unfair this was. But my problem wasn't just with my parents. It was also with my sister Vicky. While I harbored no ill will toward Vicky, I couldn't help but feel like an unwanted addition to the family. She knew that as well and made me feel like a stranger every day in my own home. She would always compete with me for everything, be it about grades, attention from our parents, or even the smallest accomplishments. It felt like a constant battle for validation, and I was always on the losing end because my parents preferred her always. As a result, I would feel really inferior and we never quite saw eye to eye. Our relationship seemed more like a perpetual contest, with her consistently coming out on top. On one occasion, she wanted to be friends with a group of girls, but because she was nerdy, she was afraid to approach them. One of the girls and I had art classes together, so she introduced me to the rest of the group, and we all would hang out together. Vicky was so jealous of this that she made my parents talk to me about including her. Also, whenever I was hanging out with them, I tried to fight it, but my mother called me selfish while my dad said she was my sister and I should look after her. Begrudgingly, I agreed and introduced Vicky to the rest of the girls. Now, Vicky doesn't really have a lot of friends, so she can come off as overenthusiastic, so she would constantly try to impress the girls in our group, often coming across as intrusive. Despite her efforts, she struggled to find her place among them, and the awkward tension between Vicky and the other girls was always palpable. For example, one of the girls had a crush on a guy, so Vicky took it upon herself to approach the guy and let him know that the girl liked him. He laughed because he was not interested in her and told everyone about it, which embarrassed the girl. After this, the girls told me very firmly that they didn't want me to bring Vicky with me to our hangout, so I agreed. However, Vicky wasn't having it. She threw a tantrum when she found out that the girls wanted nothing to do with her and went to our parents, insisting that I should not hang out with these mean girls either since I was her sister and I should stand up for her. I refused and told her that it was her own fault that they didn't want to be friends with her. But my parents, as usual, supported her. They lectured me about how Vicky had no ill intentions and that I should try to convince the girls to forgive Vicky, but that if they didn't, then I should cut them off also. I refused and put my foot down. I liked hanging out with them, and unlike Vicky, I wasn't going to jeopardize my friendship in any way. I told my parents that I had enough and it wasn't up to me to find friends for Vicky. My parents were pissed and gave me the silent treatment for weeks, but I'm glad I stuck to my guns. This group of girls has continued to be my friends till today and are basically like my sisters. I have cried with them, laughed with them, and shared some of the most meaningful moments of my life. However, at that time, it was really hard for me to stand firm in my decision. There were moments when doubt crept in, when I questioned whether I had made the right choice in prioritizing my own happiness over what they wanted. This was not the only reason Vicky grew to hate me. There was also another incident of a boy. She had a crush on a guy, and I had no idea about him. He and I would sit together for some classes because we were friends. He tried to ask me out for junior prom, but I declined politely since I was already going with someone I liked. Later, when Vicky found out, she made a hue and cry about it, telling my parents how I always take things she wants and that I was knowingly flirting with a guy for months. She called me a bunch of nasty words which no one should say to their own sister and told my parents how she wished I was not her sister. My mother sided with her, telling me how it was wrong of me and that as a sister I should respect girls' code. I tried telling them that I wasn't even interested in the guy and had declined his invitation, so she was free to ask him if she wanted, but Vicky refused to let it go. Looking back, I think she knew the guy would have rejected her anyway, so she just wanted to take her frustration out on me since he asked me instead of her. Once my dad took me out for ice cream, telling me that he wanted to spend some father-daughter time with me. Now this never happened, so I was really pleased. However, he started asking me a bunch of questions like if me and my boyfriend were being careful, if my boyfriend came from a good family, or if my boyfriend and I ever did drugs. I was taken aback by his line of questioning and asked him what he meant by all this. This is when my dad revealed that Vicky had been making up stories and telling my parents for months that I was doing drugs and drinking alcohol with my boyfriend. This was a complete lie, and I showed my dad my phone for him to verify that Vicky was lying. Later, when my dad confronted her about all the lies, she tried to justify that no one our age just hangs out with a guy and that I was hiding things from everyone. I was so pissed that I yelled at her for trying to make unnecessary drama and told her that it wasn't my fault that she had no one to date, but that she needed to keep her nose out of my business. Vicky didn't like it and punched me. This happened out of nowhere since he had never been physically violent before. My nose started bleeding as I fell down on the ground, clutching my face in pain. My parents rushed me to the emergency room, and all the while they were pleading with me to not file a police complaint against Vicky. They kept saying how it would ruin her life while I was sitting in the backseat clutching my face. Vicky didn't even care, nor did she apologize. Later, when the nurse asked me about the incident, I told her the truth, and she called CPS. My parents were furious with me for involving CPS, viewing it as a betrayal of family loyalty. In their eyes, Vicky's actions were dismissed as a mere accident, an isolated incident that should not warrant such drastic intervention. They pleaded with the authorities, insisting that Vicky was not a danger to me and that her actions were out of character. In the end, Vicky was let go, but they warned my parents that they would keep a close eye on our situation in case any other accidents happen with me. As you can imagine, Vicky was really shaken up, and so were my parents. Later, my parents told me that they were disappointed in me for trying to ruin my sister's life. My mother started to cry and told me how I was tearing the family apart by involving outsiders. My father's disappointment was palpable, his words heavy with reproach as he questioned my decision to escalate the situation. I told them firmly that I wanted Vicky out of my life, and they agreed. I did feel guilty involving the authorities, but for the first time I felt safer at my own house. Once Vicky had been formally warned, my parents had a separate conversation with her, and since that day she stopped talking to me altogether. I very much preferred this over her constantly hovering around me or trying to insert herself into my life. When my grandparents found out about this incident, they asked me to pack my bag so I could live with them for the remainder of high school. They informed my parents, who did not protest much, so I left to live with my grandparents. Unlike my parents' place, I felt safe and loved here. The remaining days of high school went well, and I made lasting memories with my friends. My parents never once visited me or called me throughout all that time. I knew they were happy with their beloved daughter, so I never tried to contact them, even though it hurt me that they could so easily discard me like I was nothing. When I was graduating high school, my parents only showed up to cheer for Vicky. They didn't even congratulate me or approach me, and it felt like I was just a stranger to them. However, my grandparents were there and scolded my parents for being so blatantly obvious about their favoritism. I don't know what my grandfather told them, but my dad later approached me awkwardly and congratulated me. Later, I found out that I was accepted into a good college with a full scholarship. I was so happy about it because I was dreading asking my parents for any financial help. I informed my grandparents about this, and they offered to take me out to a nice restaurant for dinner. After dinner, my grandmother posted pictures of me on her Facebook account, writing a long caption about how proud she was of me for being such an exceptional student. Our relatives soon found out about it, and they chimed in congratulating me. I guess some of them might have reached out to my parents, who had no idea about all this. Instead of feeling happy about it, my mother called to tell me the next day that Vicky had locked herself in her room crying because she had not been accepted yet by any college, and that I was knowingly trying to make my sister feel bad about her grades by talking to all our relatives. She told me how this was all my fault because Vicky was apparently depressed after the CPS incident and I had pushed her into bad grades. I was so unbelievably heartbroken that my own mother could blame me for such a thing that it was the last time I ever talked with her for a very long time. My grandparents helped me move into my college dorm. Due to my high school boyfriend's college being far away from me, we had broken up. I went into college single and ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with newfound independence and determination. The breakup had been difficult, but I was excited to meet new people. This is where I met Rob. He and I were both freshmen and we both spent half of our days in the library. Rob was unlike anyone I had ever met before. His quiet demeanor and studious nature mirrored my own, and we quickly found common ground in our shared love for academia. As the weeks turned into months, our friendship blossomed into something deeper, and I realized that I had developed feelings for Rob that went beyond mere friendship. Being an extrovert, I was quite upfront about my feelings for Rob, and I was surprised to know that he felt the same way. We started going out and have been going 8 years strong. My grandparents have met Rob and they absolutely adore him. I have met Rob's parents who literally treat me like their own daughter. On occasions, Rob's mother has even confessed to me how she had always wanted a daughter, so she is glad that Rob met a wonderful person like me. To be honest, this is the first time I've been surrounded by family members who like me and don't actually resent me. I have told Rob stories of my childhood growing up and he listens to me with empathy and understanding. Throughout these last 8 years, my parents have hardly contacted me except to send me an occasional birthday text if they remembered, but that is it. Recently, Rob and I got engaged. He proposed to me while we were trekking to our unusual spot to watch the sunrise, and it was a dreamy proposal. It was so sweet how nervous he was to pop the question to me, and I had no doubts in my mind when I accepted the proposal. I posted pictures of my engagement on my Instagram and also informed my grandparents about this. They were so happy for me and congratulated us on our future. I guess the news must have spread because my parents called me out of the blue to congratulate me as well. I thought it was just a casual conversation since we had not talked for years. They asked me about my life, my job, and my apartment before my dad asked straightforwardly if he could walk me down the aisle. I was taken aback by a sudden question since just a few moments ago, he didn't even have an idea about which company I worked in. I told him that I had not thought about it yet, and my dad told me how it would be embarrassing if I didn't ask him and others would question us about it, so it's better if he walked me down the aisle. I scoffed and told my parents that I didn't even know if I was going to be inviting them to my wedding since we had not been in contact, but this pissed my parents. My mother started to tell me how disappointed she was by my response, emphasizing the importance of family and tradition. She went on to tell me how they would always be my parents no matter what and that I should let bygones be bygones. Part of me was tempted to listen to my parents and accept my dad's offer because I did want our relationship to be mended. But another part of me hesitated, weary of opening myself up to potential disappointment and hurt again. However, I was going to be entering a new chapter of my life in a few months. So I told my dad that he could walk me down the aisle, and he seemed overjoyed. Now, during the wedding planning, I reached out to my high school girlfriends who I had always stayed in touch with despite the physical distance that had grown between us due to our careers. I told them how I wanted the gang back together and that I wanted them to be my bridesmaids. There were a lot of happy tears and congratulations, and without hesitation they accepted my invitation to be part of my bridal party, embracing the opportunity to reunite and celebrate this milestone in our lives together. We all planned to go to Vegas to celebrate my bachelorette party while Rob had a separate bachelorette party with his friends as well. My friends and I posted a bunch of pictures from the party and overall everyone had a lot of fun. However, when I came back home, my parents called me to let me know how disappointed they were that I had not invited Vicky to be a part of the celebration. I told them that there was no way that I would have involved Vicky in my bachelorette party and that I didn't want her to be a part of my life. This took my parents by surprise and they asked me what I meant. So I clarified that Vicky's actions, particularly her history of deceit and betrayal, had left me deeply wounded and mistrustful of her intentions. I couldn't fathom inviting her to such an intimate and joyous occasion as my bachelorette party, knowing that her presence would only cast a shadow over the festivities. I also informed my parents that this was also why she was not invited to my wedding. Hearing this, my parents lost it. They went off about how I had no right to exclude my sister from my wedding and how it was my duty as her sister to include her in such important events. They told me that Vicky had been looking forward to meeting me after she found out that I was getting married. I was confused, and I asked my parents what gave her that idea since we had not even talked to each other for such a very long time. But my parents brushed my concern aside, saying this is not how sisters behaved with each other. I understand where you're coming from, I told them, but you have to understand that my relationship with Vicky is complicated. After everything that's happened, I just don't feel comfortable having her be a part of my wedding. She has not even once apologized to me for everything she put me through. However, my parents, as usual, ignored my words. My mother kept saying how she wanted what was best for the family, and that inviting Vicky wasn't a big deal anyway. My dad insisted that our relatives would talk about why my sister wasn't invited, and this would cast a negative light on my wedding. However, I knew better than to yield to their demands, so I did not relent to them. I told them that I was okay with people talking behind my back and questioning my character as long as I was surrounded by people I liked and trusted during my wedding. My mother then asked if my fiancé would be okay with this and went on to tell me how my in-laws were going to judge me for being so unbelievably cruel as to exclude my own sister from my wedding. I laughed and informed my parents that my fiancé and in-laws knew about my family dynamics and none of them would even care if Vicky was present or not. They urged me to reconsider emphasizing the importance of family unity and forgiveness, but I remained steadfast in my resolve, unwilling to compromise my own sense of well-being for the sake of appeasing others. In the end, we agreed to disagree, each of us holding on to our own perspectives, and my parents told me how they needed to think things over, and we ended our conversation there. I did inform my grandparents about this as I felt a bit guilty for standing up to my parents, and they completely have my back. My grandparents told me that I should not force myself to invite anyone I didn't want there, and that my parents were as usual trying to guilt-trip me. Since this conversation, I've been feeling a bit better about my decision and got distracted with my wedding planning. Since my wedding is fast approaching, last week my dad called me to let me know that he had thought long and hard and that he and Mom would no longer be attending the wedding. Before I could even react, he went on to say that this also meant that he would not be walking me down the aisle. I asked him if there was a specific reason why, and he informed me that Vicky was going to be moving to a new place soon, which my parents had helped her find. And since I was going to be excluding her from the wedding, she had decided to host a housewarming party that same day, so they would be attending that instead of my wedding. I felt a mix of shock and disbelief wash over me as I processed my father's words. The realization that my own sister's house party took precedence over my wedding was a bitter pill to swallow, exacerbating the sense of hurt and betrayal that I had always felt for years. I simply told him that I understood and I hung up the call. Although I tried to act brave in front of my dad, deep down the pain of rejection cut deeper than words could express. When I informed Rob, he was furious about how insensitive my parents could be after they were the ones who had insisted on being invited. He was the one who gave me the idea that I should ask my grandfather, since he and his grandmother were basically there in my life more than my parents. I agreed, so I called up my grandparents and asked them if they would be willing to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Tears welled up in my eyes as I spoke, overcome with emotion at the thought of how much they meant to me. "You and Grandpa have always been there for me," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "You've been more than just grandparents to me. You've been like parents, and I can't imagine anyone else I'd rather have by my side on my wedding day." My grandparents didn't even hesitate before saying yes. They told me how honored they would be to walk me down the aisle, and unlike my parents, they would not disappoint me. Their words reassured me, and in that moment I felt a profound sense of peace and contentment wash over me. With my grandparents by my side, I knew that I had a family who loved me unconditionally and accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. I also talked to my in-laws about this, and Rob's parents assured me that they did not care if my parents didn't attend, and that regardless of their attendance, they were delighted to witness and support our union. My wedding is in 2 days, and today I woke up to several missed calls from my dad. I called him back thinking it was an emergency, and when he picked up, he asked me if it was true that my grandparents were walking me down the aisle. I told him yes, that was true, and then my dad went off about how disrespectful this was to have asked my grandparents. I reminded him how he was the one who had declined to come to my wedding, so I didn't see why he was so upset. My dad went on to yell at me about how he and Mom were just trying to make me see the wrong of my ways, and that they thought that by declining the invitation it would teach me a lesson. He went on to say how it was he and Mom who had raised me and paid for my food and education, so my grandparents had no right to replace him. I tried to reason with him, explaining that my grandparents had been there for me in ways he and Mom never were, but he wouldn't listen. He also told me how I had done nothing but lied at everyone for me, and this was all my fault. Since this conversation, I have been wondering if I really did something wrong here. ITA for asking my grandparents to walk me down the aisle? Date 1. Wow, I did not expect so many people would comment on my post. I have seen a lot of advice and suggestions on how I should approach this situation. I do agree that I need to cut off my parents permanently because their constant back and forth is exhausting and is starting to affect my mental health. I don't want them in my life when they have consistently shown me that Vicky is always their first priority. My parents are indeed selfish, and I have known that for a long time. However, how can a child just stop loving her parents? It's a much easier thing to say, but it's very difficult to actually do it. However, for my mental peace, I have no choice but to do this so I can enjoy my wedding tomorrow. Update 2. Sorry for the lack of update this past month, but I have been quite busy since my wedding. First of all, yes, my wedding went quite well with my grandparents by my side as I walked down the aisle. Despite the absence of my parents, I felt a deep sense of joy as I exchanged vows with Rob, committing to spend the rest of our lives together. My girlfriends and I danced the night away, and I can't begin to describe how important it is to stay in touch with your childhood friends no matter what, because sometimes they are your chosen family. During the reception, I did feel a twinge of sadness at the realization that my parents were not there to share in this special moment, especially as I watched Rob's parents and cousins giving speeches to him. However, I took solace in the knowledge that I had made the right decision for myself, prioritizing my own well-being and happiness. Some of my girlfriends did give speeches sharing memories of our experiences and the bond that had carried us through both good times and bad. In the days following the wedding, Rob and I went for our honeymoon, which his parents had paid for as a wedding gift. I spent all my days just lazing around and enjoying myself with my husband. I feel so giddy every time I look at Rob and realize that he is married to me now. As I had mentioned earlier, I did cut off my parents by blocking them from everywhere. I didn't bother sending them an explanation because, very frankly, they don't even deserve one. I have no idea whether Vicky actually had a housewarming the day or it was just an excuse for my parents to not attend my wedding, but at this point I don't care. I wish nothing but the best of them and their beloved daughter. Update 3. So I was not going to update anything further since my last update, but something just unexpected happened and I thought y'all deserve to know. I haven't checked my email in the past month because I was busy with my wedding and honeymoon, but today as I was sorting through the emails I found an email from Vicky. I don't even know how she found out my email address, and I was completely taken aback. I hesitated over whether to open her mail or simply delete it unread, but curiosity got the better of me, so I clicked on the email. Inside was a lengthy message from Vicky expressing her regret over our strained relationship and her desire to reconcile. She acknowledged the mistakes she had made in the past, admitting that she had been selfish and immature. Vicky apologized for the pain she had caused me over the years and expressed a genuine desire to make amends. She went on to write how she feels happy for me now that I am married and that she wishes me nothing but the best. She ended the mail pleading that I should not punish my parents by cutting them off and that they missed me. Reading her words, I felt a mix of emotions: surprise and skepticism. Part of me wants to believe that Vicky has truly changed, that she is sincere in her apology and willing to work towards repairing our relationship. But another part of me remains guarded because this seems too good to be true. However, regardless of what she has written, I know for sure my parents don't miss me, because if they had, they would not have treated me this way all these years. I thought about sending a reply back to her, but then I decided against it. After all, forgiveness isn't something to be rushed. It is a process that requires time and reflection, and while I am not sure if I am ready to forgive Vicky, I don't want to completely burn the bridge either, since she is the one who has apologized to me for her actions. To be honest, after my marriage, I no longer feel alone. I have learned to recognize that I have my loving husband by my side, supportive friends, and the unwavering love of my grandparents. And with their support, I know that I can navigate whatever challenges lay ahead without ever needing Vicky or my parents in my life. I have also looked into it and have found a good therapist with whom I have booked my first appointment. I have taken this step so I can address and resolve any wounds from my past and heal from them. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I ghosted my fiancée after she asked for open relationship before marriage. I have rewritten this a few times in an attempt to shorten it, but our history goes back since we were kids. I am looking for some advice as to what I do when I get home in 2 days. I am changing all names, obviously. Very sorry for the length of this monster. Jan and I had been friends since we were kids. Our parents were lifelong friends. We grew up together and started dating in our teens. It was like it was almost expected by our families. They had more plans for us than we did. When I was going for my master's, I had to move to another city and Jen remained in our hometown working on her nursing degree. After a year, we decided to remain friends and not have the pressure of our relationship control us. We both remained best friends and we both dated other people. It was weird because we both always knew this was temporary and we would end up back together at some point. I graduated and stayed in the city I got my master's in and started working in my field. I waited for a transfer back to my hometown and when I got it I was so happy. Jen was in a long-term relationship and he was a nice fellow, but I always got the feeling he was weary of our friendship. I understood the vibe and stepped back out of respect, although she and I would talk several times a year. My boss and mentor, I will call Paul, 44M, was a great guy and we became good friends. He taught me the ropes and one day came down from the ivory tower and wanted to talk. He explained there was an open position in a foreign city for 2 years and it would be advertised shortly. He explained the position and even though the money wasn't huge, all expenses such as rent, hotel and expenses related to travel were covered. Basically, I would be based in Tokyo and have to travel once in a while to other Asian cities for a few days here and there. I thought about it, talked to my friends and parents. Paul said it was a position but would be a great opportunity to prove myself and climb the ladder. I thought why not? I could save most of my salary and gain valuable experience. Paul said he would speak to the old man and if I wanted it he would recommend me. He explained he himself did something similar years ago and it helped his career, so off I went. The first year was horrible getting used to the culture and social rules not only in Japan, but the other countries I would visit for work. One thing that surprised me was how available women were everywhere I went. They loved foreigners. I got to sample the delights of the Orient. These weren't third-world women, most of them were highly educated. I had many FWBs and clearly told all of them I wasn't interested in long-term or marriage as I only was staying temporarily. I ended up doing 2 more years. Paul would visit several times a year on vacation or to supervise some work and I will admit we had some greasy times in a few cities. Angeles City, Philippines and a few others. Contract was over and I went back home. Put a nice down payment on a house just outside the city. After living in a city of 37 million, I needed some space lol. I was home for a month and while visiting my parents Jen was there. She and the other guy had broken up a year ago and we started talking more seriously even though we always had contact over the years. We started dating again. I held off having sex as much as I wanted because I was really afraid of what would happen. I had developed an addiction of having various partners while in Asia and was trying to control the desire before Jen and I got serious. I mean, everyone including Jen knew I dated, but on social media there would be infrequent photos of me and different women. My mother called me a wem a few times and well, to be truthful, that kind of stung. Now is when things start to fall apart. Jan and I slept together and for lack of a better word she was very surprised. She said I was different and was never like that before. She meant it like I had gained a lot of experience, to put it nicely. She asked me some questions and I admit I did trickle-truth her. I didn't tell her the exact number because even if it was divided by 3 it was scary. I had no doubt that I was and could be faithful to her. The seat I inadvertently put in her mind that night would create some serious issues later. Now of course our families were thrilled we were together. It was always supposed to be this way. We were doing great and after speaking to her parents I proposed. She moved in and everything was great. There were some what I thought were some red flags, like asking if I was happy with her. Fast forward to DEC 2019. Wedding was planned June 2020. We all know how 2020 went, don't we? Christmas was great and close to New Year's we would have the first D-Day. I was sitting down doing some work on the PC and Jan and her cousin Tammy, 32F, were looking through some wedding stuff. I've also known Tammy since we were kids and we were cool. Jen asks if we can talk and Tammy walks into the living room and sits on the sofa. I went to sit at the table to talk to Jen. She starts by saying for me to not interrupt or freak out. She wants to talk about something. She then explains our difference in the bedroom and says she believes I wouldn't be satisfied with her and eventually I would cheat on her, and she didn't want our future children and relationship to be ruined if I stray. So here I was thinking, great, I am about to get dumped. Just as I am thinking things can't get worse, I hear the infomercial guy in my head. But wait, there's more. Jen asks me if I was willing to open the relationship so she could gain more experience and it would help her feel less insecure. She states I should not be worried as I am the only man she ever loved and that's why none of her relationships had ever led to marriage. I did agree with her on that point as I felt the same. Now of course I think this is a joke and she is not serious at all. This really can't be happening, right? Since this was a year and a half ago, I will try my best to recall the main points. She says she will only be with random people and never with someone we know or work with. It won't happen with the same person twice and no emotional connection. I was like, WTF, when I realized she wasn't joking. I lost my breath. Didn't think it was possible for a heart to skip a beat and jump to the center of my throat. I am not an angry or violent person, but now I am yelling. I am starting to understand why Tammy stuck around close by. I yelled, Tammy, did you put her up to this? Tammy says she is just there to support Jen. Wow, thanks so much. So then Jen says I am free to do as I wish under the same rules, and I said no. I am so pissed at this point, and even writing this now I'm raging. I then said I don't want one-night stands, I just want one person. She says, who? I looked at Tammy and gnawed in the eyes and said, I want to F Tammy now. I get a rise out of Jan and Tammy wasn't expecting that, and she is a bit red in the face and now uncomfortable. Jen says no, she is family and someone we both know, and it is gross for me to even suggest it. I am now totally in bizarro world. Where the hell did this come from? We argued back and forth for a bit, and I told her if she does this the relationship is over. I am totally against this and I love her and we can work through everything together, but not this. I stormed off, grabbed my pillow and went to the guest room. I could hear them downstairs for a bit, but couldn't hear what they were saying. It would have been a hilarious joke if it didn't last for an hour of conversation. I didn't sleep all night and was a bag of shit at work the next day. Jen started 2 weeks of night shift that day, so at least we wouldn't be home together for that time and we could both cool down and revisit this later. Dinner would be in the fridge for me every day with an I love you note. She would text frequently, but I kept my answers short. Thursday night of the next week of her night shift, I go to the PC to work over some files and I notice an email notification on her account, and it's a hotel reservation for a good hotel that's close to my office. I know it well as I go often with coworkers. I am thinking she is supposed to be working, but maybe she wants to apologize and take me for a night out. The next morning I am waiting for her text or call to invite, but only asking me how my day was. Then she says she's so happy, she only has to work one more night of the night shift. How does she have one more night in a hotel reservation? I was sick, stressing in my office, started looking through some dating sites, especially profiles with no pics. I can't find anything. Paul pops in and asks me if I want to go for lunch and sees I'm a mess. He asks what's up and I tell him all. Is hard mta, but has always supported my relationship with Jen. He suggests we go get lunch at hotel restaurant and I scream no, not that place. He didn't know that part. We actually go for lunch and I am sick to my stomach. Can't eat. Don't even want to drink. He says I can't work like this and I can take as much leave as I can, paid and unpaid if needed. I told him I can't be there at my house anymore. I can't see her and a part of me wants to believe it isn't true. I rush home and put as much my shit in my car as I can and go back to the office. Paul says let's go stake out the hotel and wait for her to check in. I mean, I am no pie or detective, I am more like inspector. I was really resisting this, but I really had to know. So we go set up in the lounge bar and I start pounding them back and waiting, still hoping this wasn't real. Around 6:30 Paul taps me on the shoulder and there she is at the front desk and not in uniform. I want to strangle her, scream, spit, cry. I don't know. We wait for 10 minutes after she gets in the elevator and Paul and I walk to the front desk. I ask the reception to put me through to Jen blank room and it rings. As soon as she answered, I just started yelling into the receiver and she sounded confused. Jen, I told you if you did this that we would be over. I am done, wedding off, relationship over, and I hung up and got my eyes out of there. Now where to go? I went back to Paul's and now my phone is lighting up. The only person I called was my dad and explained in PG-rated terms what happened and I need to leave town for a bit. It wasn't a discussion and I feel bad for how I spoke to my old man. Phone didn't stop for 2 days. Everyone under the sun called me and I didn't answer. I didn't know what to do. The only way I could explain how I felt was like walking around underwater. Paul mentioned some financial things I should deal with to protect myself. I wasn't even thinking about that. The house, wedding loans for the car. We kept separate accounts, and one for the wedding and one for house-related bills. Couldn't care less. The next day I emailed Jan and said this would be our last contact, and I was leaving the city for a while and the wedding and everything else was off. I called my dad back and spoke with him at length, and while he was crushed, he understood I needed time and space. He said he still hopes we could work it out. 10 days later I boarded a plane and traveled to Bali. I never answered any of her or anyone's messages or emails. I don't know if she left the hotel that night or stayed. I didn't care. I eventually landed in Bali and climbed into a bottle for the next month and went offline with the exception of my dad and work. Didn't even care if I got fired. I wish I could say I enjoyed myself, but was mostly just drunk. I felt a lot of rage and shame and hate about how things went down. I kept in touch with Paul about my leave, and after 3 weeks he asked if I could run back to Tokyo to look after some things. We talked about the new global virus, and I mentioned coming back to Canada to settle things there, as I was hearing rumors of potential lockdowns. I got to Tokyo on March 1st, and it felt good to get back to work, even if it was just a little. After hearing lockdowns were coming, Paul mentioned me getting back to Canada, but I said it's only going to be 30 or 60 days. 30 to 60 days EFF me. I was still in Japan for another year before I got vaccinated, but by this time I didn't really want to go home. My house was rented out and I was talking to family but refused any info about Jen. On September 21st I received news my dad had a heart attack and was doing well but would need a triple bypass. This surgery is serious, not as serious as it was 40 years ago, but I still want to see him, and just in case. I know when I get home it is going to turn into a shit show and I really don't want that. Just want to see my folks and thank Paul for all he has done for me, even as selfish as I was, but I know I'm going to have to see her and I have no idea how I'm going to feel or think. I am so sorry for the length of this. Even still, I left a lot out. Any advice, tips, or insults would be appreciated. I am flying out in 4 hours and will land in about 24 hours. Update 1. After landing, I went to see my dad. He is looking good and actually looking forward to his surgery. Mom is doing well, but obviously masking concern. I spent almost the first 24 hours by his side, and I think we talked about everything under the sun, but nothing heavy. Don't want to stress him. Told him I am here for him, but I am using this trip to reorganize my life, close some doors and open some new ones. Booze into him already. We talked for a bit back and forth talking about my dad work, and he asked me if I had any contact with Jen, which I said no to. He then informs me the old man, the boss, wants to see me, but considering my father, it can wait. I know I am in deep and tell I may as well get it over with. I have a list of things I need to accomplish this month, and I may as well start knocking things off it. Meeting Jen is one of them. I entered the office for the first time in what seems like forever. Many faces missing, a few new ones, and the usual suspects. A few people nodded at me and greeted me. We headed up to the old man's office, and I had never been there before. We walk in, and he motions for us to sit down. I had never spoken to the old man before. He does walk the floor from time to time, but people just part like Moses spreading the Red Sea. This is the conversation that followed. Old man. Good morning, gentlemen. This is a closed meeting and anything discussed is private, blah blah blah. The old man just starts going off on a rant about responsibility and dedication, and he does have some good points, I have to admit. He looks at Paul and asks why they should keep me around. Paul. He does great work. He has saved accounts and acquired many new ones, plus we can't find anyone to do the job for the 20% below market salary like we are paying him. WTF. Then Paul and the old man and Paul start maniacally laughing like that bar scene in the Goodfellas movie. The old man wipes away a tear from his eye and tells Paul that's why he's the best VP he has. I make a good salary, but come on man, I feel quite slighted. The old man looks at me and leans in. Old man. Listen kid, I know you had some problems with your woman, so let me give you some advice. He says some guy's name he is quoting. I don't know if I am remembering word for word, but this is the gist of it. Old man. God gives a woman eyebrows and she plucks them out and draws on new ones. God gives a woman a face and she paints a new one over it. God gives her breasts and she buys a push-up water bra. God gives her a form and still not satisfied she buys slim-fitting clothes to change that form. If God himself cannot please her, then how can you, brother? Please don't kill yourself. Well, that kind of blew my mind a bit, I must say. Old man looks at Paul. Old man. I can trust you to handle this properly. He pauses. Your mother will kill me if I have to fire you. So now it kind of hits me they are f***ing related. Paul and I walk out and I look at him and say 20% man really. He puts his arm around me and says don't worry about that, I got you covered. Me, so am I getting fired or disciplined? All no dumbass, you are getting promoted, he says as he puts his arm around me and kisses me on the side of the head. Me, you could have told me that beforehand, you dick. Paul. No, it was much funnier this way. I missed you, kid. Now let's go get eat up. Me, it's 8:30 in the morning. Paul. Who does that all? Do you still have a lot to learn about enjoying life? Doesn't surprise me with this guy. Really, what should I expect from someone who got all liquored up before on sake and got into a fist fight with a monkey, got his ass kicked as well, I might add, at the hot springs in Japan. We did end up getting pissed up. We talked about work and what was going to happen. We talked about Jen, and he advised me that I really should meet her and get closure. He said we both did stupid things, but we are good people. Once I get closure, then I will be able to move forward in my future without an anchor of emotion holding me back. He said once that is resolved, then we can talk about my employment future, what I want to do and where I want to go. So that was checked off the list. At least I still have a job. Dad is looking good. There is still the matter of Jen, which has been consistently in my thoughts. I unblocked her on FB and scrolled through to prepare me for what is to come. I sent a PM and asked if we could meet for dinner sometime soon. We only explained pleasantries and are meeting for dinner in the next few days. That will be my next update. Jan and I agreed to meet at a restaurant a few hours after she got off work. Now going into this, I was afraid of two things: that my anger would remain and I would act accordingly, or my love for her would remain and I would act accordingly. I was hoping to find a comfortable median in the gray area. All my plans flew out the window the moment she walked through the door. She looked wonderful. She smiled and walked over, and my stomach was in my throat. I wasn't this nervous when we lost our virginity together. We shared a short, awkward hug, and I could smell my favorite perfume on her. Is she about to love bomb me or play some emotional tricks? Is she in another relationship and here to show me what I missed? No rings on her finger, even the one I gave her. We talked about my dad first, and she told me she always checked in on him when she was on shift and assured me a surgeon for the upcoming bypass was one of the best. We kick around small talk like her extreme workload during the pandemic and what I experienced being locked down in Tokyo. I was seriously getting ready to crack. I can assure you I was calm and collected on the outside but falling apart underneath. I told myself I needed this to consolidate these feelings in order to move on. Finally, it seemed we were dancing around the elephant in the room for a painful amount of time, and she finally looked at me and her face changed. The whole conversation after that is a blur. I will recount it to the best of my ability. Jen. First, I want to tell you how sorry I am for what happened and for hurting you. Me. Are you sorry you got caught or actually sorry for how you hurt me? Jen. Of course I'm sorry for what it did to you, what it did to our lives and our future. I threw it away because of my insecurity. Me. So did you plan it because of your insecurity, or you secretly wanted to punish me for the people I was with when we weren't a couple? Jen. Maybe both, but let me say that any other man that was in my life before we were engaged I never loved like I loved you. Tim, her ex before me, cheated on me because he always told me that he could never compete with the feelings I had with you. We broke up for that reason. I did not know this, and to be honest, I never felt bad he cheated. I never wanted you to know I was going to sleep with another man. I thought I could emotionally detach from it, and even if you found out, we could work through it like everything we ever experienced before. Me, you thought very wrong. It was probably the most painful thing I've ever experienced. I didn't need you to be perfect or experienced, I just needed you to be mine, all of them. Jen. Every single one could never add up to what I felt with you, but now I'm thinking, was it a real feeling or the projection of the dream of us that our family wanted or the fantasy we expected? It started to get emotional, and Jen excused herself and went to the washroom to collect herself. We were in a good medium-sized restaurant and only a few tables were occupied. Paul tagged along for some support, as some of you mentioned, and strategically placed himself in the sealed-off lounge. I looked over to get some encouragement or a thumbs up, and he is having a rather animated conversation with two rather attractive ladies, laughing and hand gestures the whole 9 yards. He finally looks over and gives me a questioning thumbs up, and I nod that everything is okay. He smiled, then gave me the middle finger with a smirk and went back to his extracurricular activities. This effing guy, seriously. Jen comes back and we resume. Jen. Is there anything you want to ask about that night? Me, it can't be undone, it doesn't matter. Jen, nothing happened. I wasn't even sure if I could have done it. When you called the room, it scared the shit out of me and I raced down to the lobby, but you were already gone. Me, it doesn't matter now. I am not here to rehash the past, I want us to work on moving forward. Jen, can you forgive me? Me, of course I can forgive you and I do forgive you. You are not a horrible person, you just made a horrible series of choices which put us here. It is not all your fault. I should have been more open and understanding of your worries as well. I was going through a cycle of emotions from love to anger to regret. Part of me wanted to yell at her and another part of me wanted to take her home and forget this never happened. For the past few weeks I've been watching these Reddit videos on YouTube, preparing myself for this conversation and seeing these men punishing themselves for what their SS had done much worse damage than the actual cheating. I was determined to not be that simp. I start looking at her with the old man's words running through my mind: painted face, painted nails, and form-fitting dress. Do I even really know her? If this is her outward appearance, is her mind the same? Are all their minds the same? I harden myself. Jen, what now? Is there anything in the future for us? Me, I want you to remember when we were kids and walking home from the park, that vicious dog that approached us, I got in front of you on instinct to protect you, to save you. The owner called the dog and it took off just mere seconds really, but when you are 9 that's pretty scary. Me, all these years later I stood in front of you loving you and protecting you for whatever would come at us. But this time when I stood in front of you giving you everything I had, you stuck a knife in my back just like the frog and the scorpion. This statement really hit her like a bolt and she lowered her head and sobbed a bit. I wasn't finished. I needed to get it all out. Jen, I am sorry. She takes out the ring box and slides it across the table to me. I leave it there. Me, I don't want this. I am pissed off you think I want to be sitting here with my heart jumping out of my throat and you crying. I want to be home playing with the baby we would have by now. I can't remember anything said in the next few minutes. She began sobbing and holding her hands in her face. I have said some shitty things in my life, but that one takes the cake. I apologized and said that went too far. It snapped me out of anger mode. The rest of the conversation calmed down, and after I had blown off that steam, we actually had a normal talk just about life in the future because our parents are so close and her mom and dad are like my number 2 family and vice versa. We talked about how we could coexist in this realm as friends. Reconciliation is not on the table. She got up to leave and we hugged for a long time. I am going to leave this here. It's been a long few days. I will update you if anything happens. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Jealous sister ruined my wedding dress and tried to make my son's first birthday all about her pregnancy. Now my husband is mad because I supposedly ruined son's first birthday. I, 29F, am the youngest of 3 siblings. While growing up, I have always known that my oldest sister, Elena, never liked me. She didn't have any issue with my middle sister, Terry, but hated me for some reason ever since I was a baby. Elena was my first bully and would bully me throughout my school years. When I reached my teen years, I started finding my individuality, i.e. punk clothing, dark makeup, heavy metal, etc. She would make fun of me in front of my friends and call me names like Cruella every day. Life with Elena was hard. She would scream at my face, punch me, or try to push me down the stairs by sneaking up behind me. I was terrified to be around her. Our parents did see her being mean to me, but they chose to stay out of it as much as they could. They would tell me how sisters sometimes fight and that I should have more patience for Elena, since she was having a hard time adjusting to her siblings. When she moved out after getting a job, I finally felt free. My middle sister, Terry, was much better and she was always kind to me. She taught me to put on makeup, bought me my first heels, and has continued to have a good relationship with me. Somehow, Elena hates this and has told Terry several times to stay away from me, but Terry doesn't listen to her. I thought after Elena moved out she and I would have a much better relationship, but I was wrong. She eventually got married to her now husband, Gary. In my family, reaching 21 is considered a big deal. When my sisters had their 21st birthdays, they threw parties with their friends and families and generally had a great time. This made me excited. I decided for my own 21st birthday, which was approaching. I was looking forward to my birthday celebration. Well, A week before my 21st, my middle sister called to tell me that the oldest was pregnant, but she hadn't told everyone yet. I was happy for her, but then I felt my stomach drop as I realized she hadn't made the announcement yet, which meant I already knew what was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. During the celebration of my birthday, my sister came to my party wearing a shirt that said "New Mommy" and gold. I was shocked to see this. While I had anticipated the possibility of her revealing the pregnancy on my birthday, I had hoped she would at the very least wait for me to cut the cake. Obviously, people started asking her about it, and she loudly announced how she was pregnant. Everyone erupted in joy while my sister stood in the middle soaking in all the attention. I felt so awkward because now my birthday celebration had turned into a pregnancy announcement. When I congratulated her, she ignored me as if I wasn't even present and continued to talk to our relatives about how she and her husband were thrilled and looked forward to becoming new parents. I felt like tearing up because no one seemed to want to celebrate me anymore, so I decided to walk out of my own birthday party. Terry ran after me as she understood how I felt. Later, my parents questioned me why I walked out, and when I told them the reason, they reprimanded me. They told me how I was being childish and that I should be happy for my sister. The thing was that I was happy for my sister, but she could have made this announcement any other day. However, she chose to announce it on my birthday knowingly. She knew all along that it would shift all focus on her, and she had been successful in doing so. Since that day, I decided to stop inviting Elena to all my birthday parties. Terry was also cautious and kept her distance from Elena, since she didn't want to be treated like me. When I was getting married to my then fiancé, Paul, I didn't want to invite Elena to my wedding because I was afraid that she would do something again to steal my spotlight. My parents, however, begged me to invite her as a guest because they were afraid that other relatives would talk about us not getting along. For the sake of my parents, I agreed and warned them to talk to Elena so that she would be on her best behavior. Paul and I had saved our hard-earned money over the years to have our dream wedding, just like we always wanted. The one thing I was most looking forward to was my wedding dress. I have always had issues with self-esteem, so I wanted to feel like $1,000,000. All in all, my dress was over $800, which may not seem like much, but it was a lot for me, and I had worked hard to budget this for my wedding dress. I loved my dress, and there was beading in some embroidery all over the bodice and hem trailing up and down the skirt. It made me feel like a princess, and I was really happy with it. I had shown the dress to Terry and not even my mom since I wanted to keep my look a secret. The only issue was that I needed some alterations on my hip as I was a size smaller. Alterations can be pricey, so I asked my aunt, who I knew would be happy to help me. My aunt agreed and asked me to come and give it to her. I visited my aunt's place with my dress, and she took some of my measurements so she could alter the dress accordingly. She understood how expensive the dress was and assured me that she would work on it carefully. We talked for some time, and I requested her to not share pictures of my dress with anyone, and she assured me that no one would ever know. My aunt was going to call me a week later after the alterations were done. A week passed, and there were no calls from my aunt. I called her multiple times, and she wasn't picking up. I was a bit worried since she was quite old, so I thought maybe something had happened to her. As a last resort, me and Terry drove to my aunt's place to check on her. My aunt opened the door looking quite grim. I questioned her as to why she had not been picking up my calls. This is when she told me how she was so sorry for everything and started to cry. Terry and I stood there unable to understand what was happening. My aunt then took me inside her room turned work studio where she had kept my dress. I screamed in horror when I saw that my dress was completely torn. The bodice of my dress was torn right in half in the front, the beads strewn everywhere, and the puffy skirt was all ripped out. I almost fell down on the floor in shock. Terry questioned my aunt as to what had happened and asked her if she had done this to my dress. My aunt shook her head and told us how Emily had visited her a few days ago with her dogs. She had told Emily that my dress was with her and she was working on it. Apparently, when she went to get Emily lunch, one of her dogs accidentally got into this room. Emily had begged my aunt to not tell me that this was her fault. Since then, my aunt had been trying her best to fix the dress, although it was pretty impossible at this point. She told me that an estimate to repair the dress would cost me even more than the actual price of the dress since the material was too good. All I could do was break down while Terry tried to console me. My aunt looked broken-hearted too as she kept apologizing repeatedly. I then told her that she could have locked her doors and maybe the dog would not have got in. However, my aunt told me that she had in fact locked the doors, but somehow the dog had still managed to get in. Hearing this, my blood ran cold. I realized that maybe there was a possibility that Emily had knowingly opened the doors for the dogs to get in and destroy my dress. I was beyond devastated. When I told my parents about the dress, my dad offered to buy me a wedding dress, telling me that since I didn't take any money from them for my wedding, I should at least allow him to buy me a wedding dress. I was heartbroken as I had been so sure that I would be getting married in my dream dress. But unfortunately, I had no other choice left. I informed my parents about my suspicion about Emily, but they immediately tried to defend her and blame the dog. However, Terry supported me and told my parents that we needed to talk to Emily and get to the bottom of this. If Emily had truly and intentionally destroyed my wedding dress, then she would no longer be a part of my celebration. The next day, I asked Emily to come to our parents' place where I and Terry were driving to as well under the pretense that I wanted to discuss wedding plans with everyone. I knew Emily wanted to be a bridesmaid, so she excitedly arrived without any suspicions. I told her straight away that I had found out everything from our aunt. I watched the color drain from Emily's face as she stammered to say how her dogs are generally very obedient, but had somehow managed to sneak into the room. Terry questioned her directly if perhaps she was blaming her dog when the truth was that she was jealous of my dress and destroyed it. Emily immediately began to yell at us, saying why would she ever be jealous of someone like me who had less than her. I then pointed out to her how she had always tried to one-up me all our childhood. Hearing this, Emily scoffed and told me how I was being delusional and that she didn't even like my wedding dress. This is when we caught her in her lie. I asked her how she even disliked my dress when I had never even shared pictures of it. My mom agreed and looked at her intently. Emily began to stammer and say how when her dog destroyed the dress she then saw it. But something felt off. My dad firmly asked her to not lie anymore and questioned her if she had in fact been involved in destroying my dress. In the end, after she was cornered, Emily finally spilled the truth. She tearfully acknowledged her jealousy and insecurities, confessing that she couldn't bear to see me happy on my wedding day. The revelation left my parents stunned, grappling with the realization that their eldest daughter had intentionally sabotaged my happiness. She begrudgingly agreed that she had snuck into my aunt's room to see my dress and had left the door ajar. She knew her dog would do the rest of the work. She had then begged our aunt to not tell me anything, perhaps thinking that she could get away with it. Our poor aunt had clearly been manipulated and had been worried about breaking the news to me since she didn't know how I would react. I was so pissed at Emily that I wanted to choke her right there. Emily started to tell me how she has never liked me ever since we were children, and even as an adult she can't help but continue to dislike me. Terry defended me and told Emily that she should have dealt with her emotions by going to therapy rather than destroying my things or bully me. My dad for the first time stood up for me and told Emily that he was disappointed in her. I was still angry and hurt, so I asked her to pay me $800 back for the dress since she had now publicly admitted her mistake. Emily seemed taken aback and told me how she did not have that kind of money, but I threatened to take her to court so we could settle this legally. My mom, torn between her two daughters, attempted to mediate between us. My mom told me that since my sister was apologizing to me, then I should have more grace for her. However, I reiterated that I needed my money back since she and her dog were responsible for destroying my precious dress. In the midst of the confrontation, Terry stood by my side offering support and emphasizing the gravity of Emily's actions and yelled at Emily that she needed to get over her jealousy. In the end, Emily did manage to cough up $500 only, telling me how she didn't have the rest of the money and that as her family, I should just let this go. Furious and hurt, I decided to cut ties with Emily and uninvited her from my wedding, realizing that her envy had led her to destroy such a significant event in my life. My mom tried to mediate again, but this time both my dad and Terry told her that Emily had crossed a line and there was no going back. With my wedding dress irreparably damaged, I had to choose a new one, which my dad paid for me as he had promised. Despite the challenges, my wedding turned out well. Instead of dwelling on the negativity with Emily, I chose to direct my focus towards my future life with my husband. I believe witnessing me getting married without her inclusion might have prompted Elena to finally grasp the consequences of her actions. She sent me a bouquet of flowers congratulating me. However, I chose to ignore it and refrain from responding as I was still hurt and angry about what she had done to me. I stood by my decision and never reached out to her, even though my mom would occasionally plead with me to forgive her because she is family. Years passed without any communication between us. Throughout all this, Terry and I had a wonderful relationship and we would hang out all the time. Last year I gave birth to my first child. My husband was with me in my delivery room and was my rock. Later, when I came back home, my parents came to visit me. They were happy to see my baby and spent some time with my son. Later, my mom insisted that enough was enough and that I should get back in touch with my sister. She told me how both me and Emily were now mothers and we needed to get over our past so eventually our children can become close. I don't know if it was my pregnancy hormones or the happiness of being a mother, but I started to consider my mother's request. When Emily heard about my son, she called me to congratulate me. In this time, instead of letting it get to voicemail, I picked up. She was surprised that I wanted to talk to her, but I told her how I had been thinking a lot and that it seemed time to let bygones be bygones. Emily immediately agreed and apologized to me again. She expressed deep remorse for the hardship she had subjected me to all those years ago, revealing that she had come to comprehend her jealousy and mental health struggles through therapy. She assured me that going forward she would be a better older sister to me and that she was going to help me and my son wherever she could. Given the new chapter 1 was entering as a first-time mother, I chose to forgive her for everything. My primary focus was on ensuring my baby would grow up surrounded by boundless love. Since the birth of my son, Emily has indeed stood by her promise and been there for me in every possible way. She has offered assistance wherever she could, and Terry, much like myself, has been pleasantly surprised by Elena's transformed behavior. Since we last spoke to her, the three of us have gradually started spending time together, and it genuinely appeared that Emily had overcome her past issues. Now coming on to the incident that happened. My son just turned 1 and we threw a small party to celebrate. So the party was going well. We had ordered a cute cake. The decorations were on point, and everyone was having a good time. As my husband and I brought out the cake for my son, everyone started to sing happy birthday. Suddenly, I watched Emily walk towards the DJ and grab the mic from him. People turned to look at her as she then announced to the room that she was pregnant again and had waited until now to share this happy news. I stood there in shock, absorbing her words, and it all seemed like a bad joke to me. My 21st birthday memories came reeling back to me when I was first upstaged by her, and now my son's first birthday was ruined by her announcement again. The whole room became quiet with everyone looking around awkwardly, not knowing how to react. My husband stood there motionless, not quite understanding why Emily would do something like this. Emily then walked up to me in front of everyone and announced that since she had always been there for me for my first child, she expected me to be there for her second child and help her take care of the baby. Emily continued to say how she would want nothing more than a grandbaby shower organized by me for her baby. I was shocked to say the least and looked at her blankly. She then handed me a small envelope and told me that she was looking forward to seeing what her baby shower would look like. I opened the envelope to find a to-do list for her baby shower. I couldn't believe her audacity. Anger surged within me, fueled by years of pent-up frustration, and I had enough of her behavior. My family watched as I started tearing the list into shreds right in front of her. That's when all hell broke loose. Elena's smirk vanished, replaced by a shocked expression, and then the waterworks started. She burst into tears, further drawing the attention of everyone at the party. My dad sternly asked Emily's husband to take her away, while my mom tried to defend her, saying that as my son's aunt, she deserves to be here for the celebration. Meanwhile, Terry, my ever-supportive sister, shot me an understanding look and decided to take matters into her own hands. She held Emily and politely escorted her out so we could try to continue on with the party. Unlike my family, who was used to Emily's antics, my husband looked utterly shocked with everything that was happening. He was obviously angry at my sister for stealing the limelight from our son, but he was furious at me as well, not just for tearing up the list, but for causing a scene on what was supposed to be a joyous occasion. In his eyes, I had ruined our son's first birthday, and he didn't hold back in expressing his disappointment to me later privately. As the party continued, the tension still lingered. My parents tried to play peacemakers with my relatives, but it was evident that the damage was done. It was awkward after Emily's announcement, and eventually we cut the cake, had our meal, and the guests left slowly. In the aftermath of the party, my husband and I had a heated argument. He believes that I should have taken the high road by waiting for the guests to have left until I addressed the issue, since Elena's actions had already overshadowed our son's special day. I argued back that she would always continue to do this unless I finally stood up to her and humiliated her in front of everyone. I just couldn't let her turn every significant moment in my life into a platform for her own agenda. So I told her there for standing up to my sister. Did I really ruin my son's first birthday? Or was I justified in standing up for myself against years of mistreatment? Update 1. Wow. Thank you all for the overwhelming response. I didn't expect this to blow up. I appreciate the support and the different perspectives. Some of you suggested talking to Emily and apologizing to her for humiliating her so publicly, while others think she's the one who owes me an apology. I refuse to apologize because this wasn't my fault. She has continuously disrespected me and is now starting to disrespect my son. Why can't she announce her pregnancies at her own parties? She doesn't have any need to take the limelight away from me and my family, but she continues to do that since she just can't get over her inferiority complex for some reason, and I am absolutely tired of her antics. I plan on sitting down with my husband and explaining to him everything after he calms down so he understands my whole history with Emily. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update. I sat down with my husband and explained everything to him when we both had time. Firstly, I told him about my childhood and teenage years when my sister would bully me and humiliate me in front of my friends. His eyes widened in shock as he had no idea previously that she was so mean to me growing up. Of course, I had mentioned a few instances here and there, but I had never gone into specifics with him. Then I told him about my 21st party where she had pulled the same stunt with me and how humiliated it made me feel. I explained to him that this had been happening to me my entire life and that she couldn't let me have the spotlight any day. He was shocked after hearing everything from my perspective. He told me that when I had mentioned to him about the wedding dress and how Emily had ripped it up, he thought it was just a one-time thing. He got along well with his sisters, so he had no idea how terrible Emily had been to me all my life. He started to apologize to me for being angry and told me that he had no idea that I had such deep wounds. He explained to me that he was just excited for our son's birthday, but with the drama between me and my sister, he felt that it ruined the entire mood of the party, to which I completely agreed with. I told him that I never wanted our son's first birthday party to go this way and that I just couldn't take her antics anymore. We hugged and I knew that all was forgiven between us. My husband then told me firmly that we needed to cut things off with Emily because he was scared that she would treat our son this way and humiliate him in the future as well. He told me that our son might start to notice this while growing up and he didn't want our son around Emily. I agreed with him and informed him that I was already planning on cutting her off. I will be informing my parents about this as well so that they know that both I and my husband have decided to do this and nothing can change our minds. Meanwhile, since the party, Emily has tried to call me and sent me several messages which I have refused to open because at this point, no matter what she says, our relationship can neither be repaired or go any worse than this. I have no idea if she blames me for ruining her pregnancy announcement or is apologetic, because regardless of what she says, I won't believe her anymore. I had always foolishly forgiven her before, but when it comes to my son, I can't let my sister ruin his life. Also, my son might not remember his first birthday, but me and my husband will remember the day forever. What my sister did will forever be etched onto our memories. Hence, I will block her, so she can never again get a chance to ruin our lives again. Update 3. As I had mentioned earlier, I called my parents to talk to them regarding my decision to cut off Emily forever. My dad replied back that he completely understood my decision because after what she had done, he didn't want to talk to her as well. My mother started to protest, saying that I was being too cruel to my sister and I should never say never. Hearing her say this, something snapped inside me. This is when I finally lost it at my mom after watching her treat Emily as her golden child for years. I was done being pushed aside. I started to tell her the various things that Emily had done to me over the years and how she had failed to protect me as a parent. I reminded her that she should have been a better parent then and asked Emily to stop or take her to therapy and then let her get away with everything. This might have made our relationships better and we could have continued to be sisters, but that didn't happen, so she should stop asking me to forgive her. I told her firmly that if she didn't respect my and my husband's decision to cut off Emily permanently, then we would have no choice but to cut her off as well. Hearing this, my mom started crying on the other line, telling me that I was being too cruel and that she could never live without her grandchildren. She apologized to me and told me that although she didn't support my decision to cut off a family member permanently, she would keep her opinions to herself and in the future. I wasn't convinced by this and told my dad that, for the time being, only he was allowed to see my son. My mother protested, but I cut her off, saying that she was clearly supporting a bully, so she was a bully as well. Hence, I didn't want my son to grow up around such adults. I asked her to think long and hard about how she had failed me as a parent and whether she would like it if she was in my shoes. Since our call, my mom has sent me several messages saying that she can't choose between her children. The thing is that I never asked her to choose between her children, but for her to blindly support my sister kind of rubs me the wrong way. Obviously, I will not cut off contact with my mom completely, but I can't help but hope that one day she realizes how wrong she was for supporting my sister and not standing up for me. Update 4. It's been 4 months since my last update. I know a lot of you wanted to know if anything changed between me and my sister. I have continued to keep my distance from Emily and have blocked her from all social media accounts and phones. When our parents have family events, even though she is there, I completely ignore her. After publicly humiliating her, I think she is wary of approaching me and I act like she doesn't exist anyway. Terry has also cut off Emily completely. At first, she didn't want anything to do with her after my son's birthday party, but my mom pressured her to be in touch with Emily, and then Emily started to behave weirdly with her also. This made Terry quickly realize that Emily was starting to behave with her the same way she used to behave with me, so she cut her off and blocked her as well. Me and Terry have continued to have a wonderful relationship, and she will be the only aunt to my children, which I'm quite happy and comfortable with. I decided to join therapy recently to work on my past, realizing that I should have cut off Emily long ago and never forgiven her. The therapy has been a transformative journey, helping me understand the impact of my sister's actions on my mental health and self-esteem. It has also empowered me to prioritize my own well-being and focus on building a positive future for myself, my husband, and my child. Looking back at the incident during my son's first birthday, I recognized the significance of standing up for myself, even if it meant causing a scene. I refused to apologize for defending my boundaries and protecting my family from further toxicity. As for my husband, all is good between us. He has come to understand the depth of my sister's toxicity. Our relationship has grown stronger as we navigate parenthood together, focusing on creating a positive and nurturing environment for our son. I am lucky every day to have a partner in a best friend like him. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Wife of 25 years suddenly left to find herself, taking half our savings to travel the world solo, while I'm left working and struggling alone to pay the bills. My M50 wife, F48, abandoned me 2 months ago to find herself. My wife Mary's family has a history of dementia, developing memory issues in their mid to late 50s. Her mom, grandmother, and several other relatives on her mom's side have developed dementia. Her mom lived with us for 4 years until earlier this year. Her father is dead. Our kids are independent and out of the house. Our oldest is in her last semester of college, and our youngest is enlisted. The last 4 years were tough on us. Our kid's daughter moved for college but moved back for a bit during COVID, and our marriage, living with someone with dementia, is brutal. We had talked a lot the last year about taking the remaining college funds, our regular savings, selling or renting the house. We were ready to downsize anyway, quitting our jobs and traveling for a year or until the money ran out. We just had to wait for her mom to move into a home. I understand her anxiety about developing dementia, and I was burned out. You live through COVID, working remotely, a wife working remotely, a college and high school student taking remote classes, and a mill with dementia, and see how you hold up. Space finally opened up, and we were able to move her mom into a care facility. I finally thought I had a chance to breathe. When we moved Mary's mom out, Mary's mental health took a huge downward spiral. I went from caring for her mom to caring for her. She felt guilty about putting her mom in a home and had lots of anxiety about developing dementia. Our plan was to start our traveling in the summer of 2024. 2 months ago, I got home and she left a note. My friends call it Exhibit A. Basically, she was going on our trip without me. She had quit her job, took most of the savings, and wasn't sure when she'd be back. Maybe a year, maybe sooner. She knew I'd understand. Her location is turned off and my calls go directly to VM. I texted the kids a picture of the note. We have our own checking accounts for direct deposit of our paychecks, but we transfer most into a joint account to pay the household bills and save. We both had access to a main savings account. We have joint credit cards we use for household expenses. The 2 cars and mortgage are joint. We both also have our own small savings accounts, our own retirement accounts equally funded, and our own credit cards for gifts and fun things. I closed all joint cards and accounts. I waited a month to see if she'd come back, hopefully before she spent our savings. After receiving only one text the first month, I went to a lawyer. She basically said there was very little to do right now other than change the beneficiaries of my retirement accounts and life insurance. Yay! My wife gets nothing else if I die alone while she's having our adventures. It was only a month, and there was no way to serve her papers. My lawyer advised me to keep paying the mortgage in the cars. The cost of trying to get a judge to approve the sale of joint assets was more than making payments. I didn't want to ruin my credit by letting one of our cars get repossessed. But I can't sell it because she's on the title. I get random texts and she sporadically posts on Instagram. Of course, she has comments turned off. I want to block her so badly, but my lawyer advised me that it's better to maintain a communication channel that's not through our kids. Her last post was from Hawaii. She put in the comments how great a husband I was for letting her take this trip. I'm barely making it, paying for 2 cars, a mortgage, household bills, and insurance, hoping there are no emergencies because I have no savings, and she's enjoying our trip. Fair? I'm so pissed at her. I helped take care of her mom for 4 years, and when she fell apart after her mom moved into a memory care home, she returned the favor by abandoning me. I'll never get to take this trip and have to put off retirement. My only solace is the kids are pissed at her, but they'll probably forgive her eventually. Double F her. I'm no fool. She's hooking up with guys. She looks good. She'll have zero problem getting men. I texted her and asked if she was sleeping around, and a week later she responded that she wasn't sure. So, I'm drinking alone on a Friday night, and she's somewhere, probably on a beach, enjoying life. Edit. My lawyer has given me a bunch of advice and options. It was just way more than I could possibly include in this post. I could definitely push the issue harder, and I might need to at some point, but all that work is very expensive. Finding her, serving her, getting a judge to sign off, that's not cheap. I'm following up soon, and I plan on talking about our savings and my finances. Until I paid all the bills and realized how little was left, it didn't hit me that I had to worry about money. Here's an update from my original post. I'm feeling much more positive now that the financial situation has become a little more manageable. Basically, I'm running up debt that will get paid off when I sell the house. Even with lawyer fees, I have 6 to 8 more months before I have to worry about money, assuming there are no emergencies. My friend's wife gave me some good advice. Don't go from being a hero to a villain in your kids' eyes. How I talk about and treat my wife will determine my future relationship with my kids. I don't give a damn about my wife, but I don't want to make her a sympathetic figure or drive them away from both of us. I followed up with the lawyer. Basically, she said we're going to have her pay back the savings she took through a reduction in her share of the assets. Any division of assets will include the savings she took. She'll also have to repay the money I spent maintaining the household while she was gone. There is plenty of equity in her share of the house and her retirement plans to cover that. She said that our finances are so intertwined that, after nearly 25 years of marriage, my wife is going to get some share of the assets. The best case is she agrees to the terms of the divorce, and it's relatively cheap and quick. Otherwise, it gets complicated and expensive. She gave me a lot of options and how much I could expect to spend, so I decided just mostly to wait. I got a couple of credit cards with promo rates for purchases and transfers, which gives me breathing room, and I can conserve cash. I'll just pay them off when I sell the house. Now that my financial situation is less stressful, I'm actually enjoying her being gone. I'm free to do whatever I want, whenever. I don't have to cook, clean, or take care of anyone. The house is quiet for the first time I can remember. I loved my wife, but her mental health weighed down our marriage. On balance, it was worth it until now. The first month or so, I expected her to be there whenever I'd get home. When someone was at the door or if I heard noises, I'd think it was her. I checked the doorbell cam obsessively. I'm not looking forward to her returning. It has to happen, but when she comes back, I'll have to deal with her, the divorce, getting the house ready to sell, dividing all our stuff and finding a new place to live. I'm hoping she'll stay away until after New Year's, but my daughter said she thinks her mom will be home for Christmas, either to stay or visit. My lawyer will have papers ready to serve her. Hopefully, she'll just agree to the terms and continue her travels. She's told her family she won't be home for Thanksgiving. Nobody told her my daughter and I were spending Thanksgiving with her family, though she can see the posts of us having a good time without her. People had some great advice. Renting or selling the house, not really feasible right now since I'd have to fix some stuff and get it ready to sell. Rent since I need a place to live. The amount I net each month, rent plus mortgage plus rent on a new apartment plus storage unit, equals not worth it. My kids' rooms are still full of their stuff, and I don't want to spend the time and effort to clear them out and put them in storage. Also, she left her keys. I changed the code on the security system, the passphrase, and the password. I also found a new hiding place for the emergency key we had in the backyard. Getting a helic, this was great advice. I didn't realize I didn't need both people to get a loan. If I need more money, I can go this way. In the short term, the promo rates on the credit cards were cheaper and easier than getting a helic. Serving my wife divorce papers or getting a divorce in absentia, this is something I might need to do eventually, but the cost of lawyer fees goes up exponentially in cases like this. I'm comfortable just waiting for now. Look at the phone bill to see where she's at and possibly going. I did look at her usage and notice that she doesn't post on social media until after she leaves a place. For example, when she posted about Hawaii, she made a call that day that originated in Los Angeles. She posted about a cruise, and I figured out the dates. Trying to serve her at the port, possibly, but it ended a couple of days before she posted. She tried adding international calling to her line, but I blocked it, so she removed her phone from our account. Update. My wife texted me in the middle of December that she'd be home for Christmas. I told her that we, our daughter and I, would be at my brother's, and she obviously wasn't welcome. I'd leave her car in the driveway and the fob in the backyard. She wasn't allowed in the house unless I was there. She didn't have keys to get in. She spent Christmas with her sister. When we got back, I met with her. I decided not to be overly confrontational because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I cared enough to be mad. She was taken aback about how detached I was. I could tell it bothered her that I didn't show her much emotion, not even anger. I just wanted her to agree to a divorce. This is a summary of several different meetings, both with and without our daughter. She hasn't wanted to meet with her mom alone yet. I asked why she left without telling anyone. She said she didn't want to wait a year. She didn't want anyone talking her out of it. She didn't want to work anymore, and she wanted to leave before her mental health got worse. I'm sure it was mostly because she didn't want me to stop her from taking the money. She knew I would take care of everything with the kids and house. When she left, we had decided to go in the summer of 2024 for a few reasons. Packing everything and getting the house ready to sell was going to be a lot of work. We wanted to make sure our daughter graduated college, got a job, and was settled. We wanted to make sure we had money when we got back. We wouldn't have a house, cars, or jobs, so we needed money because it could take months to find work and a place to live. We didn't want to have any worries or deal with a mess back home. At some point in our planning, she began questioning to herself, not me, if she ever wanted to go back to our old life. She didn't want to work full-time or buy a house and stay in one place after we got back. She wasn't sure what she wanted, but she didn't think she would figure it out talking to me. I told her that's the reason we were taking the trip, to figure those things out together, to see what we wanted for the next part of our life. I asked her why she didn't just get a divorce before she left. Then, she wouldn't have had to do this behind our backs, and she would have had plenty of money without stealing our joint savings. She claims that she didn't want a divorce, that she wanted us to live whatever life she figured out. I told her that's not how marriages work, one person deciding for the other. In talking and texting our daughter, her family, my texts and voicemails, she realized I might not forgive her. She was right about that, so she might have to visualize a future without me. This is where I had hoped she would say something stupid, like she was going to squander all her money living in a van and make travel vlogs. Or she met some guy that she needed to wire money to so they could open an ice cream shop in Alaska. Instead, she wants to be a digital nomad, working part-time, fully remotely, and living in new places. She tried to convince me to go with her, but I'll never be able to trust her, plus I don't love her anymore. Traveling like that for a few years doesn't sound bad, but she doesn't have a job or any work lined up. She's not in her 20s, and that way of living will get old quickly. No close friends, no family. I want her to make it work so she won't be here trying to get back into our lives. And to answer some of your questions. 1. How are the kids doing? Our son wouldn't have seen us the entire time she was gone anyway. He only responds to her with very short texts. He told me she wanted to see him, but he said he was too busy and wouldn't be able to get away. He lives in the barracks, so it's an easy excuse to avoid her. My daughter stopped talking and texting her. She's pretty upset. Her worry turned to anger when she realized her mom wasn't having a mental breakdown but was just being selfish. If her mom was sticking around, they could probably work through it eventually. I just care that my daughter is happy, so whatever she decides, I'll support her. 2. Did she spend all the money? About half, I think. She realized she needed to figure it out before she completely ran out of money. 3. Did she sleep with anyone? I didn't ask because I didn't care. Asking would imply I wanted her back or it would matter. Even though I didn't ask, she claims she didn't. Not sure if she's lying or not. She might just be saying that because she doesn't want the kids to have another reason to be mad at her. 4. Does she feel bad for what she put us through? She claims she does, and she wishes she had handled it differently. She said getting away and figuring herself out was best for her. I told her she was just being selfish. When she first left, we were worried something would happen to her, and we would never see her again. She's always been self-centered. I told her she was taking the easy route and letting everyone else handle the difficult parts. If she gets sick, kids will take care of her. Goes broke, live with family. Abandon everyone, they'll forgive her. She thinks her siblings and our children will let her live with them like we let her mom live with us. I'm sure when she visualizes her future, she sees our kids there. They might not be in the same way they were before. Despite how it might sound, I'm actually really happy with how it all turned out. Our divorce is far from final, but we've agreed on the big things. We'll sell the house, how to split the retirement and profit from the house, how to pay back the money she took, and what I spent maintaining the household. I got most of what I wanted from the settlement, and she'll soon be mostly out of my life. I won't have to pay alimony, and because she's choosing to make significantly less money than she was, I won't be forced to support her. That would have been a kick to the teeth. She isn't my responsibility anymore, and I won't have to care for her if she does get sick or goes broke. I figured I'd start dating again. I didn't realize a 50-year-old man with children out of the house, a good job, and in decent shape would be a catch. I'm not fighting women off with a stick, but I've had a lot more interest than I expected. It's been kind of nice meeting new women. I'm not dating anyone who has young kids or wants kids. There's nothing wrong with that, but I've already raised my kids. Not that it would matter if they did. I took care of that a while back, and I just recently got everyone out of the house. I've worked out the numbers, and I'll be doing pretty well after everything is settled. I only have to support myself, not where I wanted to be at 50, getting divorced and using Reddit as free therapy sessions, but I'm happier now than I've been in a while. I'm even planning a little vacation of my own. Thank you to everyone who has responded and reached out. It meant a lot. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Wife started texting a college guy, claiming friends. Now she says a kiss happened, but she didn't kiss back. My girlfriend, 34, female, and I, 35, male, have been together for a long time, 13 years to be exact. She and I agreed to hold off on marriage until we were financially stable with stable careers. 13 years in, that didn't quite happen, so we agreed to remain unmarried. During the past year, My girlfriend lost her job as an office manager, which I got for her. And then as a FLOTUS, she was let go after 2 weeks on the job. The firings and also her inability to get a steady job wreaked havoc on her self-confidence. Her self-confidence wasn't that high to begin with, but after the firings, it took a nosedive. I was there for her as best as I could. I told her that it was only temporary, that those places weren't the right fit for her, and listened to her when she voiced her frustrations. I helped with a resume, suggested a job placement program, etc. For the last 3 months or so, she has been in contact with a guy, a college student, who asked for her number and she willingly gave it. He texted her and they met up a few times. As far as I know, they are continuing to meet. She didn't hide any of this from me. She said he was simply a friend, but later on, she said that she had developed romantic feelings for the guy. But she also said she didn't want to lose me, and that she simply was continuing to meet with him as a friend, and that nothing physical happened. She said she was just confused. I felt devastated. I'm feeling devastated. I went through all of that denial, grief, anger, bargaining, and acceptance of emotions. Trust is gone. The bond has been broken. What gets me so pissed is the fact that she thinks she's continuing to see the guy as a friend, and as long as nothing physical happens, then it's okay. It's not okay. She's sharing her emotions, hopes, dreams, and life with this guy while having me as a boyfriend. That's not how any of this works. Friends don't go out to dinner and have drinks. That's dating. And it gets better. She said that he's graduating in May and going back to his home country, Japan. She also has another guy friend whom she frequently meets up with and texts. Right now, she's hanging out with one of her 2 friends and said she'll be back in the morning. I'm moving out. I don't want any part of this BS. I just need to vent and get this out there instead of holding it in and letting it eat me up inside. Due to my housing situation, my brother offered me a room in his home, but the place is not ready. I have to stay here with her until the middle of January. I'm so over this, but it still hurts like hell. How could someone do this to me? I'm not perfect, but I've supported her as best as I can financially and emotionally. I've paid for most of the rent for most of the time we've lived together. I've given her money when she was jobless. I know what I will do. Booty, don't know what to do in the meantime. Sucks so much. I can't sleep. I've lost some weight and just don't know what to do. Thank you, everyone, for your sound advice and kind words. She came back early this morning, and we had a huge row as predicted. The guy kissed her, and according to her, she didn't kiss him back. But she didn't leave place either. Horseman, you're but whatever. I asked her why she didn't go home, and her excuse was that Uber was expensive. Lol. She said that if it made me feel better, she would only see him during the daytime and explicitly tell him that it was only a friendship. Sure. But a bit of good news. My brother said I can move in within 2 weeks. I just need to find a day when she's working or out of the place to move. I'm a minimalist, so there's not a lot of stuff. I really hate my ex. I don't ever want to see her or be with her. But it hurts so much knowing she chose someone else over me. 3 years together. We had amazing memories. I was literally the happiest I was in life when I was with her. Every day from our Walmart and Target runs to living with each other, playing video games together, and also having the best vacations, including our first time at Disney World. I still to this day don't know why she cheated. She said she didn't, but the proof and all was there. It's been 4 months, and I've been a lot better mentally and getting more fit. I can't believe after getting a new job, she instantly fell in love with someone else. I didn't know she was doing things behind my back with him. Reading the messages between them when I found out hurt me. She would tell him how she wasn't happy and that I was annoying, and she was depressed. She really seemed fine to me. I took her out to events, slates, just a few weeks before D-Day, and she rested her head on my shoulder while we enjoyed our time together. After finding out and telling her to get out, she told me things about why she did what she did. She said she needed time to love herself, and she was depressed. I wasn't loving her so much. I didn't pay enough attention to her problems, and the app did. He would message her saying he promised never to hurt her and called her his queen. After being together for 3 years, the natural honeymoon stage is over, and that's when we become adults and think about life and our future now. Yes, I do regret not showing her enough love and paying attention to her problems. I felt horrible after she told me all this. It hurt me when she said she knew I would have cheated if I could, that I'm a narcissist, while I sat there crying and hurt while she had no emotion. She looked annoyed when I would mention breaking up with her. When we argued, she would hold pills and threaten to kill herself, but she was calm when I kicked her out. Months later, she tried talking to me and begged me to talk with her because she was depressed, but I ignored her because I knew my worth. Now, after getting herself together and being with the app, she actually stopped reaching out to me. I'm glad she stopped, but it also confused me. It hurt seeing posts from the app saying how she made him happy, how he promised to show her the world, to be there for her at her darkest times. It made me sit back and wonder how much I should have actually listened and read her emotions. I just get these random sad moments, and I blame myself for everything. I even admitted to everyone, even God, mistakes I had made. I hate her, but I still told everyone about the good she did for me before. I'm not a negative person and wish the best for everyone, no matter what. I didn't deserve to be hurt like this, but everything happens for a reason. Like I said, I knew right from wrong, and I never treated her badly. We had our ups and downs, and I admit I said hurtful things to her, even bringing up her past, which she lied to me about at the beginning, that had to do with some type of an obsessed. I don't want to say what exactly, but it has to do with that category, and she was willingly doing it. I definitely learned from all this. I know what to do and how to treat the next woman in my life, but I'm in no rush. It just hurts knowing she's happy with someone else. And so is he. I miss the girl I met 3 years ago, but I don't miss the cheater in her. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Called out my mom for joking about my past abusive relationship in her speech at my wedding. So I revealed how she lets my stepdad cheat on her constantly, and now she's demanding an apology. I, 33F, recently got married to my boyfriend of 3 years. Let's call him Leo. He is 28M, and we met 3 years ago at a coworker's wedding. Leo had asked me out, and it did not take me a second to say yes because he was everything that I had been looking for. He was really cute, and from our minimal interaction, I had already judged that he was quite funny and smart. We were also in the same line of work, so I knew that we would have a lot to talk about. So I said yes to that date. We started living together after a year of being in a relationship, and when he proposed to me, I said yes a couple of months ago. I really love him, and I don't think I've ever met a man like him in my entire life. He is the smartest, funniest, and most charming person I have ever met. I think I am at my happiest when I am with him, and I just really love him, and I know that he loves me too, and he would never do anything to hurt me. Believe me, I've been hurt a lot in my past. In my past relationship, I was with another guy, let's call him Nick, for almost 7 years before I met Leo. Nick and I went to high school together, and we were really good friends back then. I think I would say that he was actually my best friend before we started dating. I knew him really well, and he knew everything about me as well, so when he asked me out in our senior year, I said yes because I really liked him, but I was not sure if he had feelings for me, and so I did not want to risk our friendship by asking him out first. But it all worked out for me back then because, as it turns out, he had also liked me for a really long time, but I didn't ask me out for the same reason. We started going out together when we were 18 and stayed together for 7 years, until we were 25. We broke up because things got way too sick for me, and I could not stay with him after I found out that he had been cheating on me for almost a year. Things had been pretty bad before that, and the cheating was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. I was obviously devastated after our breakup because I had honestly believed that I was going to be married to Nick, and we would have a family of our own one day. I had dreams of having a life with that guy, but everything went to the gutters when I realized that I had been living a lie, and he was definitely not the man for me regardless of how long we had been together. Nick and I had decided to apply and then go to the same college by choice because we wanted to stay together, and our parents were also on board with it because they knew that we wanted nothing but each other. We had been friends since middle school, so our families knew that we were serious about each other and allowed us to make our decisions without any interference. My father had passed away when I was in middle school, so the only family that I had was my mother, and she really was not the best person to be in charge because she was so busy with her own life that she could hardly be bothered about me. She just usually let me do whatever I wanted, and I was okay with it. I had my own space and complete freedom and nobody to tell me what to do. It was probably not good, but I turned out just fine, so whatever. Anyway, I didn't really have a close relationship with my mother, so I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, and Nick was very open and transparent with his family, so he was also not worried about what they had to say. We had made up our minds that we were going to live together after we had graduated from college, and our parents were okay with it. Both of us got jobs as soon as we graduated, and we rented an apartment midway from both our workplaces. Everything was really nice for the first couple of months, and it felt like we were living our dream life. He was really thoughtful and considerate, and I was also trying to be the kind of person that I thought he wanted. But then with time, things started changing between us. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just real life hitting us hard, but I was sure that something was off. He started snapping at me for the smallest of things, and I felt like he was constantly looking for a way to insult me, or he would always apologize later but never changed his behavior, and it was always weird, minor, and petty stuff that he would get mad about. Like, one time he got mad at me for not putting enough salt in his food, and he refused to even have dinner that day, and it made me feel so bad about myself because I was doing everything that I could to do all the work around the house and still not compromise on my quality of work in the office, and it was just a lot of pressure for me to take. Before that, he had always tried to help me out with the housework and made sure that it did not fall on me alone, but slowly he had started putting it all on me, and I ended up having to do all the work around the house because he would always say that he was too tired. We worked the same number of hours, and we would come back home at the same time, but still, I would have to be the one to do all the work. I would do all the cooking and cleaning, and he would still pick on me and make me feel bad about myself even though he knew that I was doing my absolute best to keep him happy. So, things had changed considerably just a couple of months into our relationship while we were living together, but I still did not leave because I really loved him and I wanted to make things work. So every time that he would apologize, I would try to talk to him and sort things out, and he would promise me that he would change, but a couple of weeks later he would repeat the same things again. After one point, I got tired of the cycle that we were stuck in, so I stopped saying anything at all and just ignored him whenever he had one of his outbursts. It was difficult for me, and I would cry almost every day, but I did not want to leave because I was in love with him, and he kept apologizing to me every single time that he messed up, and I would not have the courage to leave because I did not know how to live without him, so I just kept forgiving him and giving him multiple chances to change, but he never did. In fact, his behavior started getting even worse with time, and his apologies kept getting more and more elaborate, so it was even more difficult for me to leave, and I was in a very bad position at the time. I know that a lot of you might be judging me and thinking that I was a coward and that I should have just left if things were so bad, but I think anybody who has been in a relationship like that would know that it's really not that easy. It's very easy to just say that I would have left, but trust me, when you were in that sort of situation, you don't know what to do. You lose all sense of yourself and who you are, and you keep going back to the same person again and again because they keep attacking your self-esteem, and that's what he was doing to me. He broke me down to a level where I actually started believing that I was not even worthy of love, and he was doing me a favor by being with me instead of the other way around. Things were really bad because he would just keep breaking me down and then building me up, and I kept going back to him because I did not know that I deserved better. He had even alienated me from all of my friends, so I did not have anybody to talk to at that point in time, and I was completely on my own. I would just go to work, try my best to focus, and then come back home. The only person I would see was him because any time that I wanted to hang out with any of my friends, he would just start sulking and talk about how even he had given up on time with his friends so many times just to be with me, and then I would feel guilty for leaving him at home alone, and I would end up canceling. This had happened so many times that my friends did not even bother to ask me to come out with them anymore, and I would feel weird asking them to take me with them, so we started distancing ourselves from each other. I don't blame them, we were all really young, and I don't think they understood what was going on more than I did. But yes, I even stayed with him throughout all of that. He was just so incredibly toxic, but I did not leave because I was determined to make it work, and I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with that guy, so I was willing to do whatever it took to stay with him. I had changed everything about myself. If he said that he did not like something, I stopped doing it almost immediately. I had lost my individuality when I was with that guy. I was doing all the work at home because he was too tired or maybe just too lazy to do it. I had stopped hanging out with my friends because he did not like it when I would go out with him. I had stopped talking to all the guys that I used to be friends with because he did not approve of me speaking to any other men. He would actually even get mad at me whenever I would exchange emails that were related to work with my male coworkers and would demand that I adopt a more formal tone with him so they did not read too much into it. He was so insecure and jealous of everyone in my life that if I started listing people right now, I might not even be able to finish this post, and I did everything that he asked me to because I wanted to be with him. Nobody knew that I was going through this because when we were out there, I would always put on a happy face and try to show people that I was overjoyed to be with him. In front of the world, we were the perfect couple, and everybody wanted us to stay together forever, and why wouldn't they? To them, we probably seemed like an ideal match. The two of us had been together for so long that people probably could not even imagine one without the other. This went on for years before I finally found out what he had been up to behind my back. A couple of days after my 25th birthday, I had decided to take a day off from work because I was feeling kind of under the weather, and I had a really bad headache that day, I remember that. So, I had been looking for the medicine box that we usually keep in a cabinet under the sink, and by looking for that, I grabbed something that felt like a phone. Now, I had puttered around in that medicine box several times before the day and had never found a phone. So I knew that something was fishy. When I took that phone out, I realized that it was password protected, and I had never seen that phone before. Nick had a rule that phones or other devices were not allowed to have passwords in our home because if it required a password, it meant that we were hiding something. Neither he nor I had any sort of protection on our phone, so this was kind of weird. I had a gut feeling telling me that something was off, so I immediately called a friend of mine, and I told him that I needed him to come over right that moment. Thankfully, he did come over that day, and I told him to somehow get that phone unlocked for me. Took him some time, but eventually he did manage to get into it, and the only apps that were there on the phone were Snapchat and Instagram, and when I went to the contacts, there was only one saved contact. The phone number has been saved as the name of a pizza place, but I was 100% sure that it was definitely not a pizza place because that would be way too convenient. I opened Snapchat and unfortunately there was nothing on there, but when I opened Instagram, I realized that it was logged into an account that I did not know, and there was only one follower on that account, and that happened to be one of Nick's coworkers. It did not take me much time to put two and two together and I realized what was going on, but still I had to go through the chats, and on doing so, I realized that he had been cheating on me for more than a year. It broke my heart, but it also gave me a sense of relief because now I finally had an excuse to let myself out of this relationship without feeling like I was giving up on something great just because of a few minor inconveniences. I was obviously really heartbroken because on my 25th birthday, he had bought me a promised ring, and it was really expensive, so I thought that maybe he was actually serious about me, and we were definitely going to get married in a couple of years. But after reading the conversation that he had with his coworker on the very same night that we celebrated my birthday and he gave me the ring, I just gave up any hope that I had of us ever ending up together because he had told her that he would have much rather spent the evening with her instead of me, and he had to give me the ring so that I would not suspect anything. Reading through those chats broke my heart, and I immediately decided that I was going to leave because I could tolerate all the toxicity, but I could not tolerate this. The least that I could have expected from him was that he would at least be loyal to me after everything that I had done for him and had put myself through for him, but if he could not even do that for him, I had no reason to remain in that relationship anymore. I had been thinking about leaving for quite some time anyway because of everything that had been going on, and when I read those chats, I decided that I was done with this. After my friend left, I ended up crying for about half an hour, but then I pulled myself together. Then, I started packing my things, and within 2 hours, I was at my mom's house. I did not have anywhere else to go because I had stopped speaking to most of my friends because of him, and I was not close enough to my coworkers to go to them and expect them to take me in, so even though I did not share a very good relationship with my mother, I went to her and she was nice enough. I explained the entire situation to her through tears. She hugged me and consoled me and told me that I could stay with her until I found an apartment of my own. So we stayed together for a couple of weeks while I looked for something, and she actually took pretty good care of me. It was a very difficult period of time for me because I was going through a terrible breakup. Nick would try to reach out to me almost every day, and I would have to ignore him. Only I know how difficult it was for me to do that. I kept feeling like I wanted to go back to him, but then I would remind myself of everything that he had said to the other girl, and I would stop myself from sabotaging my life once again. That time around, I was truly and fully done with him. Even though I had not entirely moved on in my head, I had decided that I was not going to go back ever again. The only time I did go back to the apartment was to grab a few of the things that I had left behind when I had moved out the first time, and I had run into him when I had come around. He had tried to talk to me, but I had told him that I did not have anything to say to him anymore and that we were done. That was all the closure that I needed, and my decision was final. It was weird to try and get back to my previous life, but I knew that I had to do this. I started going out with my friends again, talking to all the people that he had told me not to, and just trying to get my life back on track once again. I moved into my new apartment just a month after my breakup, and my mother had been nice up until then, but after I moved out of her house, we stopped speaking once again and started growing apart once more. I tried to keep in touch, but for her, I think it was more of an out-of-sight, out-of-mind kind of situation, but I was trying to be okay with it because I was relearning how to live life on my own once more since now I did not have the safety net called Nick anymore. I had cut ties with everybody who had anything to do with him, including his parents, and I just never heard from him again. Took me a few years, but by the time I met Leo, I had mostly moved on from Nick. I had healed and I had changed into a better person, so I think I was ready for Leo at the time. Leo knows about all of this, and he is literally the complete opposite of Nick. He is kind and caring, and even when he is mad at me, he makes it a point never to raise his voice at me or to exchange harsh words with me because he knows that that's exactly what Nick used to do, and he does not want to be that guy. He also always just lets me hang out with whoever I want to instead of getting jealous and insecure any time that I want to go out. It's just a huge upgrade, and I love him so much. But now coming to my mother, I had this feeling that she did not like Leo as much as I did when we first started going out together. She kept bugging me about the age gap and kept asking me if I was sure about him. Honestly, age has not been an issue in our relationship because it has just never come up. I think he is old and mature enough, and it's not like he is in his early 20s. Even when we met, he was 25, which is not too young for me. I don't understand why she wanted to make a big deal out of it, but I could tell that she was not comfortable with me dating a guy younger than me. She kept trying to tell me that I had to think things through because she did not want our relationship to end up in a place where he kept relying on me for everything because I was older and more established in my career. I did not say it to her face, but I did not think I wanted to take relationship advice or even career advice from a woman who was dating a serial cheater and had quit everything to be with her husband. So about that, when I was in my third year of college, my mother married my stepdad. It had been almost 8 years since my father's demise at that point, so it was fine. She had been dating him for about 2 years when they got married. My mother used to go to high school with this guy, and she had known him for a really long time. He had actually helped her through her grieving process and had been a really good friend to her, so I did not think there was anything wrong with them dating, but after they got married, I heard from a couple of my relatives that my mother had kicked him out of the house because he had been cheating. This news had come to me just 6 months into their marriage, so I knew that the affair had to be going on from before the wedding. I thought that my mother was going to leave because even though we don't have a good relationship, I know that she is a really headstrong and ambitious woman, and she was not going to put up with this. However, to my surprise, she was just like me. She went back to him, and within days, I started hearing from people that everything was fine again. I was dealing with a lot of stuff of my own at the time, so I did not really get a proper chance to speak to my mother about it, but I did ask her a couple of times if everything was right between her and my stepdad, and every time she would just tell me that it was fine, and it was just a little snag that they had hit in their marriage, but they were trying to work things out. I kept hearing from relatives and family friends about fights that they would have and how my mother would call them up crying after every fight because he was constantly flirting with other women right in front of her occasionally and how terrible he made her feel, and they would come to tell me all of this, but I could not help her because I was just going through so much of my own at the time. It was a pattern. She would feel bad about the way that he would behave with other women, and she would start crying and call up other people. They would tell me about it, but I would not be able to do anything, and then she would just go back to him and forgive him for everything. At this point, everybody had just accepted it, but this is how it was. Even my mother did not make an issue out of my stepdad's behavior anymore and just let him do whatever he wanted. So anytime there was a family event, he would be flirting with whoever he wanted to, and she did not say anything about it. She just grabbed a glass of wine and ignored him the entire time. It was sad, but everybody knew how their marriage was anyway. At my wedding, my mother decided to give a toast, and I let her because she was the only surviving parent that I had. It seemed necessary, and during her toast, she cracked a couple of jokes about my past relationship with Nick. I don't know why she did that or why she thought it would be funny, but it was actually really mortifying, and I was not comfortable with it. She did not even think it was necessary to run the speech by me first when she was saying stuff about such sensitive matters, and there were people there who did not even know about any of this, like some people from Leo's family. She said things like, I hope this marriage turns out better than the one that you had planned with Nick, and that she hopes that this time she won't have to deal with me running to her after we break up, because she's too old to take care of me like a child now. By the end of her little speech, I was so upset that I said something that I probably should not have. I told her that everybody knows about the way that my stepdad treats her, how he flirts around with every woman who breathes, and how he has been cheating on her ever since they were married, and how she just allows him to get away with it because she is so scared of being alone and is desperate to be loved by somebody. So instead of commenting on my relationships, she should probably just focus on her own marriage. That really shut her up, and in order to diffuse the situation, Leo called everybody to the dance floor, and it was kind of awkward for a while, but people tried to move on from that except for my mother. She and my stepdad left the venue immediately, and we did not hear from them until a couple of days ago. She told me that she had been really insulted by what I had said and that it was completely uncalled for, and now she wants me to publicly apologize to her for what I said and take it back because she does not approve of my behavior. I could tell that she was upset, but I did not think that I said anything out of line. Whatever I said was in response to what she said, and when I told her that, she started crying and said that I was her only daughter and that she had expected me to be a little more understanding of her and her humor. She said that she had just been joking, but I had really hit a nerve with what I said. I asked her why she had such a problem with it because everybody in the family already knew about her relationship with my stepdad, but then she told me that that was not really the problem. It was the fact that I had made jokes about this in front of people who did not know, like Leo and his family. We also had a couple of family friends and a few of my father's old business associates and even a couple of her friends and attendants who did not know about this, so now her secret was out, and she knew that she was going to be judged by everybody. Then, she reminded me of the time that I had just broken up with Nick, and I had come to her, and how she had taken care of me and been there for me, but instead of doing the same thing for her, I said such insensitive things, and now I feel really bad about it even though Leo thinks that I don't need to apologize to her. But I just feel really guilty about what I said. So, AITA for telling my mother to focus on her own marriage after she made jokes about my previous toxic relationship at my wedding? Update 1. Hello, Leo and I have decided that there is going to be no apology. After reading the comments, I realized that I was being stupid and sensitive again. Obviously, I don't owe an apology to the woman who never bothered to build a relationship with me and then thought that she could attend my wedding and start making jokes about my previous toxic relationship. That was crazy. She knew that I did not like talking about Nick or anything to do with him, and yet she had brought him up on the most important day of my life, my wedding day. This was a fresh start for me, and she had an opportunity to be a good mother to me. Maybe she had been there for me when I broke up with Nick, but I think that's pretty much the bare minimum that she could have done for me. I don't owe her any apology, and I think I'm going to block her so that she does not reach out to me anymore. Thank you so much for the advice, guys, and also for all the good wishes. Leo and I are really happy and thankful from the bottom of our hearts for all the support that you guys have shown us. Update 2. I have cut my mother out of my life. I have blocked her on every social media platform and her phone number as well. It was difficult because after my father, she was the only parent that I had, so even though we were not close, I did have an emotional bond with her, but that's gone now because evidently I am not a priority for her and I'm fine with it. I do have people in my life who will treat me better than her. Leo and his family definitely do, and that is enough for me. I do not need to go back to the people who have mistreated me in the past just because I'm used to it. I'm not going down that road again. Update 3. Hi guys, so it has been 6 months since I got married, and I just thought I would update you guys and how everything has been going. Leo and I are super happy. We just came back from a long honeymoon. We were not able to go immediately after our wedding because we had a lot of work to catch up on. But we finally went on our honeymoon a couple of weeks ago, and it was super relaxing and fun. I have also not been in touch with my mother for these past 6 months, and she has been going around telling everybody how much she has done for me and how ungrateful I am. But it does not matter to me because everybody in the family knows that what I said at the wedding that day was all true, and I would not even have said any of that had she not been joking about my trauma, so it was just for that, as simple as that. But anyway, I don't want to spoil the vibe right now by talking about my mother. The bottom line is that Leo and I are happy, just like I had believed that we would be, and I am actually pretty grateful for the way that things turned out for me. My mother can go take a hike. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Best friend ditched me as maid of honor 1 week before the wedding for her fiancé's rich friend. So all her bridesmaids quit her wedding, and now she's Xing me of being a drama queen. So, for context, Allison, 26F, and I, 26F, have been friends since middle school, and I think we have been friends for almost 15 years now. We literally used to be attached at the hip, and everyone who knew us called us Siamese twins because that's how close we were, and that's the way it remained through high school. Then, even though we went to different colleges, we still maintained our friendship. In college, she met Derek, and after dating for almost 6 years, they finally got engaged at the beginning of this year. I was obviously the most thrilled for them because my best friend was getting married, and right after the engagement, she asked me to be her maid of honor, and I obviously agreed. I have done all the work that a maid of honor is required to do. I've been with her throughout these past few months, and so have her other bridesmaids. She has 4 other bridesmaids. One of them is a coworker. She has another friend from high school called Maria, and 2 of her cousins as well. We used to be part of the same circle in high school, the 3 of us, but Allison and I were obviously closer to each other than to her, but she was still our friend anyway. All of us had been really excited about the wedding because we loved Allison, and most of all I loved her, but 5 days ago, she told me that she needed to speak to me urgently and in person, so I decided to meet her at her house. I had thought that it was going to be something better related, and it was, but just not in the way that I expected it to be. I went over to her place after work, and there she sat me down and told me that she was going to ask me to step down as the maid of honor. I could literally feel my heart drop. I really thought that she was playing a prank on me, so to make sure, I asked her if she was kidding like 3 or 4 times, and she had to really convince me that she was genuinely asking me to not be her maid of honor anymore, and it was really difficult for me to even understand what was going on at that point in time because none of it made sense. She had been my best friend for 15 years, so why would she not want me at her wedding? After I had calmed down for a bit, I decided to ask her the reason why she was asking me to step down. At first, she was quite hesitant and said that she did not want to hurt me, so she did not want to tell me the real reason, but I told her that I had the right to know because as her friend for the past 15 years, I don't think that it was fair for her to just fire me from the position and then not even tell me the reason. So, after a lot of convincing, she finally told me why this was happening and said that one of Derek's friends had agreed to attend the wedding, and she wanted to make that friend, let's call her Anna, the maid of honor. She went on to elaborate and told me that this friend of Derek's was somebody he had known since he was a teenager since they used to go to the same high school, and she was loaded, or rather, her family was loaded, and she was just the heir to her father's massive pharmaceutical company. Regardless, she had a lot of money to spare, and she was looking for businesses to invest in, which is something that she had mentioned to Derek a couple of weeks ago. She had been staying in London for the past few months because her grandmother's health was not doing too well, and was not sure if she would be able to fly down here to attend the wedding. But then recently, she had told them that she would be attending, and they wanted to be close to her, and she wanted to establish a friendship with her first, so she had decided to make her the maid of honor at her wedding, and then they would approach her with their business idea and try to bring her on board as an investor. She explained to me that I was still her closest and most important friend, but she needed this because she and Derek had seriously been talking about starting a business for a really long time, and if they would be able to get Anna on board, their lives would be sorted because she herself would be equal to maybe 3 or 4 investors, and they wouldn't even need to speak to anybody else besides. The experience and expertise that her family brought to the table would also be really valuable. This was not just a wedding for her, but it had also turned into a business opportunity, and that's why, in order to establish a good relationship with her, she was going to make her the maid of honor. I was flabbergasted when she told me all of this because it did not make any sense to me. From what I knew, they have not been particularly close at any point in time, even though they have been friends, so it would be really weird for her as well to suddenly be appointed as a maid of honor in a wedding, and I thought it was really insincere and said that I did not think it was going to work. I was just being honest because I did not want her to fall flat on her face while trying to butter Anna up. She told me that she had already asked Anna, and she had agreed and was very excited about all of this because she had never been the maid of honor anywhere before. She was quite unassuming and was not able to see the insincerity of this gesture, so Allison was not worried about her figuring out why exactly she had done this and said that even if Anna was able to figure out that she had only been a maid of honor because they wanted her to invest in their business, she was not too worried about it because she did not think Anna would mind. After that discussion, I realized that she had already spoken to Anna, and she was just informing me, so I did not have much to do apart from just accepting what she had told me, and I was not going to beg her to reinstate me as maid of honor anyway. That would just be going too low, and at the end of the day it was her loss and not mine. I did not say much to her, I just told her that I hoped that things worked out for her because I was really pissed and upset, and then I got up and left. She could see that I was really upset, but she did not even try to stop me, and I just walked out and went back home. And once I got home, I finally cried myself to sleep because I was so let down by what had happened. When I woke up from my nap at around midnight, I saw that Allison had removed me from all the group texts, and that broke my heart even more. But I also noticed that Maria had reached out to me and had asked why I had stepped down as maid of honor. I didn't understand what she was talking about, so I decided to text her back and ask her what she was talking about. She said that after removing me from the group, Allison had sent a message to the group saying that I had decided to step down as maid of honor because apparently I was too busy with work, and it would not be possible for me to commit my time to the wedding like I had planned on before. She had insisted that there was no bad blood between us and everything was fine, and that I would be getting replaced by another friend of hers, referring to Anna, whom she had added to the group after that. Maria told me that everybody had a lot of questions, but since she was the one who was the closest to me, she had decided to reach out to me personally and ask me what was going on because it seemed very unlikely that I would just suddenly decide that I was not going to be part of the wedding and act like this. It seemed out of character for me since I had been so excited for the wedding and had perhaps supported the most time to it out of everybody in the group. I was really overwhelmed, so I called her, and I vented about the entire situation to her. I was really heartbroken and disappointed at that point in time, so I didn't particularly care about the consequences of what I was doing. Before that, I had never spoken about Allison behind her back because I really valued our friendship. But that day I was very upset, so I told Maria everything, and I also let her know that while I did not hate Allison for what she had done, I was very upset with her and was even more upset that she had chosen to lie about the situation instead of just being truthful, so I had made up my mind that I was not going to attend the wedding anymore, and she had my blessings, and I wished her nothing but the best. But I was not going to be present there because what had happened was just humiliating. After hearing me out, Maria consoled me and told me that it was going to be fine. She did not take Allison's side and, in fact, even expressed that she was just as disappointed as me now that she knew the truth. After speaking to me for a bit and calming me down since I had started crying again, she hung up, and that was it. The next day, I took a day off of work and decided to spend it at home because I really felt annoyed and upset with everything. I did not think that there was going to be any drama, but I was wrong because towards the afternoon, I received a call from Allison, but I was not in the mood to speak to her, so I did not answer and decided to go to the gym to distract myself. The gym that I go to usually is literally just a 10-minute walk from my house, so I left my phone at home, and I went there because I did not want to speak to anybody. After about 1 hour when I returned from the gym, I finally checked my phone, and I realized that Allison had called me 25 more times after I had not responded to the first phone call, and she also left me a lot of texts, none of which were very nice. All of them were accusing me of trying to sabotage her wedding and being a total drama queen and attention seeker. She called me a crybaby and said that I had no reason to talk to Maria about what had happened since the discussion that we had was meant to be private, which is why she had called me and talked to me in person instead of just letting it all out in the group. She told me that she had to replace me and do this since she always expressed an interest in having her own business, and this was a huge opportunity for her. She was just trying to make the best of the situation, but apparently, I was taking it personally for no reason. I had no idea what had happened and why she was speaking to me that way because even if I had talked to Maria about it, it was not like that had hurt her in any way. Also, I had thought at that point instead of responding to her, I decided to speak to Maria instead because Allison seemed to be in a real mood in the way she had spoken to me in those texts. I did not like her tone and I did not want to interact with her in my mental state, so I called Maria, and then it was she who told me what actually happened. After our conversation last night, she already mentioned that everybody had been curious about what actually happened between the two of us and that I was no longer maid of honor, but since they could not speak in the group because of Allison and Anna, she had reached out to everybody personally and told them the truth, and now that everybody knew the truth, every single one of her bridesmaids, including her cousins, had decided to step down because they felt like what had happened with me was not right. All of them agreed that I had devoted a lot of time to the wedding, and I had been there with Allison every step of the way, so I deserved to be treated with more respect, and she couldn't just inform me one day that I was no longer the maid of honor and then expect everyone to be fine with it. Also, all of the bridesmaids had spent a lot of time together in the past few months, so they had developed a sort of friendship with me as well. Allison's cousins had already known me since we were kids because we have been friends for so long, and I've been invited to all of her family's events, so they already knew me, and Maria was also my friend right from the beginning. And in the past few months, I managed to get close to her coworker as well, and all of them really liked me, so they made a separate group with Allison and told her that they wanted her to reinstate me as maid of honor and make things right. If she wanted to, she could have 2 maids of honor. She had tried to communicate to Allison that what she had done was quite insulting to me and that it was not fair in the slightest, but instead of accepting that, she started getting defensive and said that she was doing this for her future and that they were the ones who needed to be a little more understanding of her situation. They even brought up a really good point that if Anna was such a good friend to Derek, then she would not need them to butter her up and flatter her insincerely by making her the maid of honor when she knew she wasn't even that close to them. She would just invest in their business because she had faith in them and was a good friend, but she refused to take any of that into account and said that this was none of their business, so they don't need to involve themselves in this. That's when the other bridesmaids said that if this was the way she was going to act with the rest of them, then they had no interest in being part of the wedding either, and all of them backed out and even left the group texts. That was what got her all riled up, and then she started calling me and blaming me for all of this instead of just realizing that it was her behavior that was alienating everybody. Now it's been a few days since that happened, and I haven't blocked her anywhere yet because she used to be a really close friend of mine, and even though right now things are not going well between us, I still can't bring myself to just cut her out of my life, but apparently, she has been going around and telling everyone that I am to blame for this situation that she is in right now. She has also sent a lot of messages to all the other bridesmaids who backed out of the wedding after that conversation that they had, and has been trying to convince them that what she has done is no big deal, even though it's a pretty big deal to me. She has been texting me every day trying to convince me that what had happened was not something that I needed to take so personally. I haven't replied to any of the messages, even though she has been trying really hard to tell me that if I forgive her, the other bridesmaids will do so too, so I need to be the one to take the first step. She keeps bringing up how we have been friends for 15 years and I can't just throw away this friendship because of something so petty, and that I should be the one understanding that this is something that she needs to do for her future ambitions and it's not personal. Like honestly, I get that, but just the way that she's dealing with things makes me feel annoyed. And I also can't just accept the fact that she chose to lie about what happened instead of just being honest. This is not the Allison that I know, and I feel like she's going to insane levels to justify herself instead of just acknowledging her mistakes and being sorry for it. She's putting me in a really difficult spot, and I don't understand what to do. So am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she replaced me with her rich friend as maid of honor at the very last moment? Update 1. Hey. So I went through the comments, and I realized that this is just such a petty high school drama. I can't believe it took me so long to come to that conclusion. But honestly, that's what it is, and I don't need to apologize to Allison or blame myself for any of this because she brought this on herself. It was incredibly difficult, but with everything that has happened, I decided that it was for the best for me to just block her and get on with my life. Yes, we have been friends for the past 15 years and our friendship meant a lot to me. It still does, and if she reaches out to me and apologizes from the bottom of her heart with sincerity and genuineness, I might even be able to bring myself to forgive her and try to reconnect with her, but right now I'm not in the right headspace for that. I can't bring myself to be receptive to anything that she is saying right now, especially how she's trying to pretend like I should not care about any of this, even though she knows that I'm really disappointed in her. She has said everything in the world except for one simple word. Sorry. If she had said that she was even just once, I would have considered her stand, but until then, I can't help it. I've spoken to the other bridesmaids as well, and they said that she has been acting the same way with them, trying to text them and explain to them that she's not wrong here. I cannot understand how it's so difficult for her to just acknowledge her mistakes. But anyway, like I said, it's her loss and not ours. I feel really bad for her since this is happening with just maybe 3 or 4 weeks to go until the wedding, and this is really the wrong time. However, she has nobody else to blame but herself, and she can continue to pretend that we are the ones at fault for sabotaging her wedding or whatever, but it's not going to change the truth. I'm just thankful that I still have people on my side. So far, Maria had been the only person directly in touch with me, but a couple of days back, even the others got in touch with me and told me that they knew exactly how close I was to Allison, and they were really disappointed in the way that she was acting as well, so I've been speaking to all of them and genuinely not trying to gain sympathy or whatever, but it's nice to have people to talk to, especially when you feel so betrayed by the one person that you thought you could always trust. I can't talk to my parents about this exactly either because my parents are really good friends with her parents as well, And even though that's because of us, I don't want them to get involved and create more drama, so I'm trying to keep this to myself and the people who already know for now, even though she did not extend the same courtesy to me and went around telling our other friends from school that I was the one trying to be an attention seeker and a drama queen. Most of them, however, reached out to me and told me about it since they were really surprised that this was happening. They were aware of the context, thankfully, so they took my side here. It just hurts that she's going around talking about me even though I'm not doing that to her. But I have all the reasons to do so. I just feel bad. Our friendship means the world to me, and it sucks that this is happening right now. Update 2. Hey, so in my last update, I mentioned that I hadn't been able to talk to my parents because I did not want them to get involved and drag them into the ongoing drama. But unfortunately, Allison was not thinking along the same lines and decided to complain to her parents. Now there are just 2 weeks to go for the wedding, and I guess she was getting desperate to fix everything, so she decided to tell her parents about what was going on. And they then proceeded to call my parents and talk to them about what was happening, so naturally, my parents called me and asked me what was happening, so I explained my side of things to them, and apparently, Allison had told her parents something completely different. She claimed that I had apparently offered to step aside as maid of honor so she could make Anna the maid of honor, and it would help her become better friends with her and sort out the investment. But now, all of a sudden, I was going back on my words and pretending like she was the one who had forced me to step down. Due to all of this, she was no longer on good terms with any of the other girls either, and she was scared that she would not have any bridesmaids or friends at the wedding, so that's why she had asked her parents to speak to my parents, and after I told them my side, I also told them not to get involved because this was something between me and Allison, and I did not want them to ruin their friendship with her parents because of this. This happened 2 days ago, and after I spoke to my parents, they promised me that they would sort things out with her parents and let it go. So yesterday, they called me up again and told me that they had spoken to Allison's parents and told them what happened. I was lucky that I had evidence since I had screenshots that would prove me right, and they had sent those screenshots to her as well, and Allison's parents were no longer speaking to her and insisted that she make things right with me. I have blocked her, so she can't exactly get through to me, but she texted Maria and said that it was really messed up for me to try and ruin her wedding because there was no need for me to involve our parents in this since now even her parents are not speaking to her. I seriously don't understand how I am the one to blame for this because I did not tell my parents. She was the one who did, and it backfired all because she lied about what actually happened, and I don't even understand how she expected to get away with it because she knew that we had proof, and it was quite silly of her to expect that I was not going to share my side of the story and just let her lie about me and make me the bad guy here. I'm getting sick of having to take the blame for all of this, and I've decided that I'm going to unblock her and speak to her and sort things out once and for all. Just because she's getting married in 2 weeks does not mean that she gets a free pass for her terrible behavior. Update 3. So I know you guys have been waiting for this update for quite some time. I'm sorry, but I kind of forgot to post this last night after I had the conversation, so I'm posting this 2 days after the phone call. I called Allison up to confront her, and the second that I called her, she answered and immediately started yelling at me. We had had fights before. It's not like we have always had a very smooth friendship, but nothing of the thought has ever happened in the past. She told me that I was making things very difficult for her and that I was being very selfish, not even trying to understand that she was doing all of this to secure her future and the investment that would come along with her relationship with Anna. I heard her out because I did not want to argue with her and get into a shouting match because she has always been the more outspoken and louder of the two of us. So I let her get it all out of her system, even though I had heard it all 1,000 times before. She just kept repeating the same things again and again, so I didn't think anything was going to happen this time. But then she chose to tell me that I was the one who was responsible for our friendship turning into something so ugly. Right now, I did not like that, so I told her that she had no right to say that to me, especially when that day at her house after she told me that she had replaced me as the maid of honor. She had seen that I was upset, but she did not even try to comfort me. I told her that if we swapped our places, I would never treat her the same way, and honestly, I would never even replace her the way she did to me. And after that, I would not expect her to understand and let it go. She tried to interrupt me and argue with me, but I told her to keep her mouth shut because I had tried to avoid this sort of confrontation in the weeks leading up to her wedding because I genuinely cared for her, and I did not want her to get upset because of me. But she had made it very obvious to me that she did not feel the same way, and right now all she cared about was herself. She really couldn't even see anybody's feelings apart from her own, which is why all she cared about was Anna. And that investment. I told her that even her parents were against her at this point in time, so she should really reevaluate what she was doing with her life. I know her parents really love her, and even though they were refusing to speak to her, it meant what she was doing was seriously messed up, and after all the lies that she had come up with, it was very difficult for me to look at her the same way. I told her that all that I needed from her was a heartfelt apology, but she couldn't even give me that. After 15 years of being friends with me, she proved that it meant nothing to her. I was crying by that point because it was a really difficult conversation for me to have with her, and when I said that she had proven that our friendship did not mean anything to her, even she started crying, and she confessed that she had just been really stressed out because Derek had been hounding her to do all of this. That took me by surprise, and she went on to tell me that she was really hurt by my statement, especially because she knew that it was not even my fault that I was saying this because she had been acting this way for a long time now. She then apologized to her and said that she had no intention of hurting me, but it was Derek who had forced her to replace me as maid of honor in the first place because he felt that it would improve their chances of getting an investment out of Anna, which is why she had done all of this, and in order to cover up what she had done, she kept lying, and that was what led to our friendship getting ruined. When I learned that he was behind all of this, I tried to calm her down because she was absolutely hysterical on the phone, and when I couldn't do that, I decided to drive to her house, and that's when we finally cleared the air between the two of us. She confessed to me that she had been put under a lot of pressure by Derek, but she did not want to talk to anybody about it because she was getting married to him, and even though she knew that he was being a little too weird about all of this, she did not want to bring it up and make it a big deal. She knew that we would tell her to leave him if she came clean to us, so she just kept lying, and now she was in a place where Derek was controlling every aspect of her life, and this was apparently not even something new. This had been going on since the engagement, and none of us had a clue because she had been hiding it so well, but now she had finally broken down mentally, so I did the needful. I stayed with her until Derek came back home that day, and then I forced her to break off their engagement. There were just a couple of days to go for the wedding, so this was a pretty difficult decision to make, but it was the right thing to do. In the meantime, Allison and I had a really long talk, and she apologized for everything that she had done because she had completely lost her head and was doing her best to just please Derek and had stopped caring about anything else. So we had a heart-to-heart discussion and cleared the air, and even though things are not back to normal, we are going to try and be there for her right now because I know she's dealing with something very difficult right now. After she broke up with Derek, he got into a huge fight with her and called her a lot of names, and I saw a side of his that I had never seen before, after which she had another breakdown, so I ended up spending the night with her, and after 2 days of being with her, I'm finally back home now. I have communicated this with the other bridesmaids as well, so we all know that we have to be there for her, and right now we are just trying our best to make her feel better. I'm willing to put everything in the past because Allison is like a sister to me, and knowing that she was not doing this of her own accord and was just trying to please a controlling partner, it makes me feel better because I know that she's not really the person that she had turned into recently. I'm going to be there for her, and I hope that everything works out in the future. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Planned a surprise engagement party, but my fiancé said no because my mom trash talk about her on call and she overheard all. Hey guys, I am here seeking everyone's advice and would like to know if I am in this situation or not. Last year, I 32M was in a very happy relationship with a woman named Sarah 31F. She and I had dated for 3 blissful years and had always discussed marriage to be our ultimate goal. We both were independent, had good jobs, and lived together. Sarah had always discussed that her childhood dream was to have a very romantic proposal and would drop hints that she want her sisters and parents to be there so they could capture her shocked expression at the time of the proposal. Hence, when I was promoted to district manager at work last year, I realized that I was earning more than enough now that I could propose to my girlfriend so we could eventually start a family together. We shared dreams and built a life together, and I couldn't imagine spending my days with anyone else. It was time to take the plunge. And what better way to do it than with an engagement party filled with love and laughter. I asked her parents for approval, and they were overjoyed with happiness to know that I was finally going to propose to their daughter. I consulted her sisters and buying the ultimate engagement ring, which was quite expensive, but I didn't mind as long as it would bring a smile to my fiancé's face. I had booked a grand venue to propose to Sarah where I had invited all her close friends with the pretext that it was just a regular party, so they wouldn't spill the beans to Sarah. I had flown my parents down for the engagement party saying that we were celebrating my new position at work. I had worked for weeks with the party planner and caterer to ensure that Sarah would have the best surprise ever. The evening started off perfectly. The venue was adorned with twinkling lights, and the air buzzed with excitement. Friends and family gathered to celebrate what they thought was just a regular party. Little did they know I had a shiny ring burning a hole in my pocket ready to change our lives forever. As the night unfolded, everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Sarah was catching up with my family, chatting with friends, savoring the delicious food, and soaking in the festive atmosphere. Laughter and music filled the air, creating a joyous backdrop to the celebration. Amidst the lively chatter and celebration, I decided to call everyone's attention by clinking my glass. I felt a bit nervous as a hush fell over the crowd as all eyes turned towards me. At that moment, I couldn't help but steal a quick glance at Sarah, who was standing beside me with a radiant smile. Her eyes sparkled with excitement and anticipation, completely unaware of the surprise that awaited her. The room was charged with electric energy as I took a deep breath, ready to embark on a life-altering moment. I began to speak, expressing my gratitude for everyone who had gathered to share in our joy. I recounted the beautiful journey Sarah and I had shared, the highs and lows that had only strengthened our bond. The love and support from our friends and family had been the bedrock of our relationship, and I wanted to celebrate that love in the grandest way possible. However, as I began to lower myself to one knee and extend the ring, a sudden shift in the atmosphere became palpable. Sarah's smile slowly faded and a shadow of uncertainty clouded her eyes. The room fell silent, and the joyous cheers that had filled the air moments ago now hung heavy with tension. With a heavy heart, Sarah hesitated before uttering the words that shattered the joyous atmosphere. "I can't." A stunned silence enveloped the room, broken only by the distant sounds of music and laughter from neighboring tables. It felt as though time itself had come to a standstill. The air grew thick with an awkward discomfort as the weight of those two words lingered, threatening to unravel the carefully orchestrated moment. I remained on one knee, the ring extended in hopeful anticipation, but the answer had already been spoken. The celebratory ambience had transformed into an emotionally charged scene of disappointment and disbelief. Trying to mask the vulnerability and pain, I managed a weak smile. "Is this a joke?" I stammered, my voice barely audible above the hushed whispers that spread through the room. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears and she shook her head. "I can't marry you." The room, once filled with jubilation, now echoed with an awkward and painful silence. The festive atmosphere had abruptly shifted into a somber reality, leaving me grappling with the unexpected rejection of what was meant to be a joyous occasion. I got up awkwardly, holding my knees, and looked around. Her parents looked devastated, and there was confusion etched on her sister's face. I looked back at Sarah as tears silently flowed down her cheeks. Sensing something was wrong, I gestured to walk outside with me, so we could talk, hoping it was just the overwhelming emotions of the moment. Guests started to speak in hushed tones as I led Sarah outside, my mind raised as I couldn't fathom why she would reject my proposal when she had always wanted to marry me. When we reached a quiet corner of the venue, I asked her if I had done something wrong. "Sarah, what's going on? Please tell me if I have done something to you?" I pleaded, desperation and confusion lacing my voice. The cool night air did little to soothe the heat of the rejection that lingered between us. She avoided eye contact, her gaze fixed on the ground as if searching for the right words. The silence stretched uncomfortably before she finally spoke, her voice cold and dead. "It's not about you doing something wrong, it's about us, about me." My heart sank as I struggled to comprehend what she was saying. "About us, Sarah? We've been together for so long. I planned out this grand event so I could give you your dream proposal. I talked with your parents and coordinated with your sister so you could have an unforgettable night. I thought you would like this, but is this why you are rejecting me?" I asked, my voice shaking. Sarah then shook her head, saying that she had loved that I had set up this entire thing and this wasn't why she was rejecting me. I kept begging her to tell me what was going on. She looked at me with a hardness I had never seen before. "You're not the person I thought you were. I can't go through with this. I can't marry you," she said, her words cutting through the night like a sharp knife. Confusion and hurt clouded my eyes as I tried to make sense of her sudden change of heart. "What are you talking about? We were fine until just a few moments ago. Please don't do this," I begged, my voice breaking. She continued, her tone growing colder with each word. "You're just not the man I envisioned. Spending my life with. Your flaws are too glaring and I can't ignore them any longer. I thought I could, but tonight made me realize I can't. You're not ambitious enough. You're too complacent and, frankly, I've outgrown you," she said, her words stinging like a relentless barrage. I pleaded with her to elaborate, to give me a chance to understand and address her concerns, but she brushed off my pleas with a dismissive wave. It's not worth explaining, we're done, and it's better this way. You need to grow up and figure things out on your own. She declared her words, leaving me feeling utterly defeated and betrayed. I was completely blindsided. The woman moment I thought was my future had just dismantled our dreams with a few callous sentences. The joyous occasion had turned into a nightmare, and I couldn't fathom what had gone wrong. Sarah refused to provide any more details and walked away from me, devastated and confused. I decided to respect her wishes and give her the space she needed. I walked back into the party. My parents, seeing my red puffy face, came running to me in concern. Sarah's parents also looked upset and asked me what happened with us, but I shook my head, telling them that I had no idea. I tried to muster a weak smile in front of the other guests, attempt to hide the pain beneath the surface. The atmosphere in the party had shifted dramatically. The once lively celebration now felt like a somber gathering. Guests, feeling the heaviness in the air, began to leave one by one. My parents hovered nearby, offering silent support, but I couldn't bring myself to share the painful details just yet. The party that began with such a promise ended in a haze of confusion and heartache. In the following days, Sarah sent her sisters to move her things out as she didn't want to face me. I tried reaching out to her repeatedly, hoping for some clarity, but my calls and messages went unanswered. It felt like she had vanished from my life without a trace. In the days that followed, I felt like I was stumbling through a dark tunnel of heartbreak. I asked her sisters and family many times if they had any idea about her decision, but they seemed to be as confused as me. No matter how many times I tried to reach out to Sarah, the silence on the other end felt like a heavy weight on my chest. It was like she had vanished from my life, leaving me with unanswered questions and a sense of deep loss. Every night I replayed the events of that night, desperately searching for any sign that could explain why everything fell apart. The ring, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now sat heavily in my pocket, a constant reminder of what could have been. The lack of closure gnawed at my mind. What went wrong? Was it something I said or didn't say? The future we once talked about now seemed like a distant, faded dream. Unable to cope with the heartbreak anymore, and seeing that she never reached out to me, despite how many times I tried, I made the difficult decision to cut off all contact with Sarah. Closure didn't come from her, so I accepted that and moved forward. I immersed myself in work and surrounded myself with friends who could help me heal. It was a painful process, and every day felt like an eternity without her. Throughout all this, my mother refused to leave my side. She stayed with me for weeks, cooking for me and taking care of me because I had no energy to do anything. My mother would console and encourage me to move on from Sarah. She would constantly tell me how I deserved to be treated better than this. My mother only decided to fly back home after I promised her that I would not skip any more meals or spend any more weekends lying in bed crying for Sarah. For the most part, one kept this promise. Fast forward a year later, things have changed for the better. Even though my heart still hurts, I am in a better place mentally. I've been on a few dates, but it hasn't been easy. The way Sarah broke up with me and disappeared had left me with trust and abandonment issues. The wounds are healing, but I am still scared of getting hurt again. To cope, I focus on my work and lean on my friends for support. They have been there for me whenever I have felt lonely or down. Yesterday was my weekend, and I was home all day playing video games when suddenly the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was a bit unusual for someone to drop by unannounced. Curiosity piqued, and I made my way to the door. As I opened it, I was met with a sight I never thought I would see again. Sarah standing on my doorstep. Time seemed to freeze for a moment as we locked eyes, both of us unsure of what to say or do next. My initial shock turned into a mix of confusion and surprise. Sarah, on the other hand, smiled at me sheepishly after a brief moment of awkward silence. I mustered the courage to speak. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, taking a deep breath for saying, "Can we talk?" she requested, her voice soft and unsure. I was unsure how to react, so I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. We moved to the living room, and the atmosphere was thick with unresolved tension. As we sat down, the memories of our last conversation flooded back, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of vulnerability. "So what brings you here after all this time?" I inquired, my emotions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Sarah took a deep breath before beginning to speak. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have let things end the way they did." I looked at her skeptically, with my brows furrowed, asking her why she would say something like this out of the blue when she left me last year without ever giving me any reason. Sarah told me that she had regretted what she had done ever since the night of the engagement. I listened, still processing her unexpected presence, the weight of the past year, and the pain I had endured made it difficult to trust her words completely. "What happened that night exactly for you to end our relationship so suddenly?" I questioned, searching for sincerity in her eyes. As Sarah recounted the events of that crucial evening, she shared the excitement and anticipation she felt leading up to the proposal. Her suspicion had grown when her sister insisted on getting her nails done, hinting at the possibility of a proposal. Despite the nerves, she eagerly awaited the moment that would change our lives. During the event, surrounded by friends and family, she found herself in high spirits. However, a trip to the washroom took an unexpected turn. While freshening up, she inadvertently overheard my mother engaged in a phone conversation. To her dismay, the words she heard cut deep. My mother expressed disbelief that her son would marry someone like Sarah. Sarah froze, hearing this, grappling with the shock of such hurtful remarks. The woman she admired and expected to welcome her into the family was seemingly disparaging her character. To make matters worse, my mother went on to say how Rachel would have been a much more suitable match for me instead. At this point, my mother must have noticed that Sarah had overheard the conversation, and she hurriedly ended the call. Sarah then confronted her about the hurtful word she had spoken. My mother initially hesitated, offering vague responses to avoid delving into the uncomfortable situation. However, Sarah, persistent in seeking an explanation, continued to press for clarity. Faced with the need for a direct response, my mother finally chose to open up exactly how she felt about her. With a stern demeanor, she told Sarah that she didn't want her to become her daughter-in-law, as she had always dreamt of Rachel becoming my wife. Sarah asked her angrily what she meant by this and who this Rachel was. Just for context, Rachel was the daughter of my mother's best friend, a woman who had become practically an extension of my mother. They had always dreamed of our union, seeing it as a fairy tale continuation of their own close bond. We were childhood friends, often thrown together at family gatherings and joint vacations. As we grew older, the pressure escalated. She'd subtly arranged meetings, leaving us alone, and hop sparks would fly. When I finally succumbed during my college years and asked Rachel out, she was ecstatic. We dated just for a few months, but the relationship quickly turned sour. Rachel, initially charming and attentive, revealed her true colors. She was extremely possessive, controlling, and manipulative. She dictated who I could spend time with, monitored my phone calls, and became jealous of any female interaction I had. The constant criticism and suffocating control wore me down, and I eventually broke up with her. My mother, instead of supporting me, tried to get me back together with her. Over the years, she remained fixated on Rachel and would never miss an opportunity to remind me of our compatibility. Conveniently forgetting the tumultuous nature of our past, she'd casually mention Rachel's achievements, lamenting the fact that I had let such a good woman go. My mother and her best friend would continue to force me to forgive Rachel, which is why when I started looking for a job, I wanted to move to a different city. When I met Sarah 3 years ago, told my mother firmly that she would never mention anything about Rachel to me or Sarah ever again. What Rachel had done to me was extremely traumatizing, and I wanted to start afresh with Sarah. I lived in a different city, so my mother seldom met Sarah, hence I thought this Rachel chapter would never come up in my life. I thought my mother knew and supported how happy I was with Sarah for all these years. On that night, my mother told Sarah about my past with Rachel and how she had always wanted me to end up with Rachel instead of someone like Sarah. My mother then went on to say how Rachel was my one big true love, so I would never be completely happy with Sarah. This deeply hurt Sarah, understandably, and she started to question if she was making the right decision to marry me. The revelation that she might be viewed as a second choice forever in the shadow of a previous love left her questioning the foundation of our relationship. This revelation by my mother had cast a shadow over what should have been a joyous occasion, leaving Sarah confused and wounded. As she recounted this painful episode, one could sense the emotional turmoil she experienced that night. The clarity of her narrative, combined with the raw vulnerability in her eyes, made it evident that she had carried the weight of this secret for far too long. My mind struggled to comprehend this revelation. I couldn't fathom why my mother would say anything negative about me, especially on such an important occasion. The news hit me like a sudden storm, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears as she spoke, expressing regret and insisting that, because of the disgusting things that my mother told her that night, she decided to abruptly end our relationship when I proposed to her. She was afraid that if she told me about what my mother had said to her, then I would say the same thing, and she didn't want to be more heartbroken. She continued saying how in the past year she had gone for therapy, where she had slowly come to realize that she had made a huge mistake of letting me go. She started pleading with me for a chance to make things right and started asking me for forgiveness. As I sat there absorbing her words, I couldn't ignore the internal conflict. The wounds from the past were still fresh, and the idea that my mother might have played a role in our breakup added another layer of complexity to the situation. I did not know what to say to Sarah, and I needed some time to think. I told her that I can't make any decision at the moment as I'm extremely shocked by what she has revealed to me, so she needs to give me some space. Before leaving, Sarah assured me that she would do anything to be with me again, and pleaded earnestly that I should give us a second chance. As I sit here writing this on Reddit, I am still grappling with a shocking truth. The question looms large: could we rebuild what was broken, or is the damage irreparable? Will I be angry for not giving her a second chance, or should I consider giving our love another try despite the hurtful actions of her and my own mother? Update 1. Thank you for everyone's comments and advice in the comments and my DMs. It's been a few days since my last update here. I did call my mother and have a conversation with her regarding this. The conversation between us was tense from the beginning. I asked her straightforwardly about what she said to Sarah that night. My mother seemed surprised that I was even bringing up Sarah after all that time and asked me if something happened. I told her how Sarah had come to my doorstep asking for my forgiveness. My mother angrily told me that I shouldn't have let her inside the house, but I stopped her and asked her to tell me exactly what she had told Sarah during the event. At first my mother tried to downplay it, saying she didn't say anything much and that I should not believe Sarah. However, I pressed her for the truth, telling her I needed to know what had transpired, otherwise I could never trust her in my life again. As I insisted, my mother's demeanor shifted. She became defensive, insisting that I shouldn't waste my time with useless women like Sarah. She told me how Sarah just wanted to come between us, and that I should not even think twice about my conversation with her. I was losing my patience at this point, so I asked her directly if she had really mentioned Rachel to Sarah. Hearing this, my mother scoffed and retorted back that it wasn't her fault that Sarah was eavesdropping on her conversation in the washroom, and it was Sarah who had forced my mother to tell her about Rachel. Taking a deep breath, I asked my mother if she really believed what she had told Sarah that night. My mother then went on to say how she knew from the bottom of her heart that Rachel and I belonged together. She continued saying how I was wasting time with other women when I could be with someone like Rachel. According to her, Rachel was perfect for me and I should end up with her at the end. Her words were like a dagger, reopening my wounds from the past. I couldn't contain my anger. I raised my voice, telling my mother that what she had done was unforgivable. I angrily yelled that she could have mentioned my past with Rachel to Sarah without putting Sarah down, and that I was done with her interference in my life. I reminded her that it was my life, my choices, and she had no right to dictate who I should be with. The conversation ended with me making it clear that I was going to cut things off with her for now. My mother burst out crying, shouting how evil Sarah was, and that this is why she had always hated her. I cut off the call and blocked her as I was done with her manipulation. It was a heartbreaking moment, realizing that the person I should be able to rely on had played a role in sabotaging my relationship. Since then, my dad has tried to call me to ask what had happened, but I have let him know that I will talk to him when I am ready. To be very honest, I am not just angry at my mother, I am also angry at Sarah for ending our relationship abruptly without ever giving me a chance to explain anything to her. I admit that it was my fault for not giving her a heads up about Rachel before, but I never thought that Sarah would leave me for something that my mother spoke to her about my past without at least verifying things with me. I am still undecided about how to have this conversation with Sarah, as I don't want to face her again. Seeing her brings up all the pain and the heartbreak I faced last year, and I don't know if I have the strength to face it all over again. Update 2. As many of you suggested, I decided to send an email to Sarah instead of meeting her again. I think sending her an email was the best approach, which meant sending her my thoughts in a more composed and collected manner. Here's a copy of what I wrote to her. Hey Sarah, I've had some time to process our conversation and I wanted to share my thoughts with you. Firstly, I appreciate your honesty and the courage it took to revisit the events of that night. I can only imagine how challenging it must have been for you to come forward with the truth. Learning about the conversation between you and my mother was a shock to say the least. I never anticipated that she would interfere in such a personal and significant moment in our lives. It's disheartening to hear that her words may have played a role in the abrupt end of our relationship. I had explicitly communicated with her about not involving Rachel in our lives, and I am deeply disappointed that she disregarded my wishes. I have confronted her regarding this and made it abundantly clear to her that what she did to you was unforgivable. However, your decision to end our relationship without seeking clarification for me was painful, and it left me with unanswered questions. I understand the hurt you must have felt upon hearing those words from my mother, and I empathize with the confusion it may have caused. However, I wish you had given me an opportunity to address the situation and provide my perspective. I appreciate your willingness to make amends, but I have come to the difficult realization that we can't be together. I understand your regret and the steps you've taken to seek therapy, but I need to prioritize my own healing and well-being. I hope you can respect my decision and the need for some distance. I wish you all the best in your journey, and I hope you find the happiness you deserve. I haven't received a reply from Sarah since I sent her this email, and I am completely fine with it as I don't want to keep the door open with further discussion. I will give an update if Sarah replies to my email. Update 3. Sarah replied, sorry for the late update, but I have been quite busy with my work now. Coming on to the update. Sarah wrote back to me after my email. She wrote how sad she was to receive my email as she thought I would eventually forgive her for last year. She acknowledged the validity of my feelings and the difficulty of the situation. In her email, Sarah expressed regret for the abrupt ending of our relationship and the subsequent silence that followed. She admitted that she should have confronted me that night instead of things with me. She wrote how she would always regret letting me go, and that I would always be the one for her. Reading her reply left me with a feeling of nostalgia. I had loved Sarah so much and thought we would be spending our lives together, but alas, life had taken an unexpected turn. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I am determined to focus on my own growth and well-being moving forward. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Future wife's best friends are constantly trying to break us up, and I've had enough. My M27 fiancé F26 friends are constantly trying to break us up, and she won't put a stop to it. I think I've pretty much had enough. My fiancé and I have been together for 3 years, and we engaged to get married this fall. This should be some of the happiest times of our lives, but I just don't know if I can go through with it. When I first met her friends, I thought I got along fine with them, but apparently not. Things have only escalated since we've gotten engaged. Here's some of the things I put up with: her friends telling her she's too young to get married, her friends telling her I'm too boring for her, her friends inviting her to girls-only nights only to find when she gets there that some of the other girls have their boyfriends with them, her friends trying to set her up on dates and introducing her to other men sometimes at these girls-only nights, trying to insinuate to me that she might be cheating on me and I should break up with her, telling me about sexual things from her past. Honestly, it's completely draining. My fiancé insists that she loves me more than anything else, but she keeps putting up with the behavior of her friends and making excuses for them. They've all been friends since they were kids, so I understand her wanting to keep seeing them. But this is crazy. If she's going to keep hanging out with them and letting them interfere with our relationship, I can't imagine that things are going to get better leading up to the wedding or even afterwards. I've never been one to say it's your friends or me, but I think it's way past that point now, and I'm ready to call it off if she seriously won't do anything about it. Should I give her another chance to stand up to her friends, or is this just a lost cause at this point? Edit. Lots of good thoughts in the comments, thank you. She went out last night. I had to work. Wasn't specifically excluded, and will probably be hung over this morning. I'll talk to her later in the day and either update this thread or create an update thread on how things go. More info. I'm sure my girlfriend and her friends vent to each other. I've heard things about guys that the other girls are dating too. Maybe I am the ass, I don't know. Her friends and me are very different people. They still go out to the bars every Friday and Saturday night, and usually at least one other night during the week depending on what is going on. I'm more of an outdoors kind of guy as opposed to the bar scene, and we tend to do most of our activities during the day now, but we still go out to the bars a few times a month if she wants to go more. I'm fine with that. I don't know, whenever I bring this up she usually just brushes it off saying things like, they're just kidding around. Sometimes they think they're losing a friend and sometimes go a bit overboard. They like you, you're just not as outgoing as my ex, as I think you're imagining it. They probably didn't mean it like that, they're just immature. Not worry about it. I've asked if there's something I've done and she can't think of any reason, at least something she'll tell me. The big thing I can come up with is that they don't seem to like that I'm not into going out to the bars a few times a week now. One of the things that prompted this post is that at a party one of her friends did a remember that one time and mentioned a drunken hookup she had from back then. My fiancé was really embarrassed that it was brought up in front of me but didn't really seem to confront her friends about it. I shrugged it off since I did the same in college. Still, I thought it was pretty rude to bring that up in front of me. Who does that? I'll be talking to my fiancé later today and I'll see what we can agree on. I'm marrying her, not her friends, But if there are going to continue to be a constant irritation, it's going to be a drag on our marriage. I can't see putting me up with forever. We'll just have to get to the bottom of it before the wedding will happen, considering I'm so at the walking away point right now. Update 1. My M27 fiance's F26 friends are constantly trying to break us up and she won't put a stop to it. I think I've pretty much had enough. No cheating and DNA testing proves we're both who we say we are. We talked quite a bit over the weekend about this whole thing. She'd like to get it resolved as much as I would, so it pretty much comes down to this. Her friends think I'm an ass, they think I'm rude, and they think I talk down to them like I think I'm better than them. I asked my fi to say if she thought that's true. She said around other people no, but around her friends yes. I had to counter that I might be that way since they're always trying to break us up. She understands that, but for now she wants me to just hold my tongue and not start insulting them if they get, and she'll take care of it. If that's the only side they see of me, it's hard for her to change their minds. I'm gonna work on that. We talked about her friends thinking she's too young. She disagrees and says she's ready. We talked about her friends thinking I'm too boring. She disagrees with that as well. We just do different things than they like. My fiancé and I do a lot of outdoor activities. Hiking, mountain biking, running, swimming, rock climbing. Her friends like the club scene better. She admits she wasn't really into the outdoor stuff at first but loves it now. We talked about her friends implying she was cheating. She said that was supposed to be a joke, but it came out poorly. They were trying to tease me about a night when she bumped into an ex at the club, but it didn't come out right. She asked me how I'd react if my friend said the exact same thing to me. I agreed I'd laugh it off, but it's different coming from people I don't trust. She agreed it was out of line for them to try and set her up with someone, but she put a stop to it long ago. Other things she thinks I'm taking out of context or blowing out of proportion, but she doesn't say I'm wrong and understands me feeling that way considering who the comments are coming from. She admits she has overshared and vented our problems to her friends, which probably hasn't helped their perception of me. She apologized to me for that. I'm not going to recap an entire weekend's worth of conversations, but we covered everything. She talked to a bunch of her friends, and at least a couple of them seem receptive to a ceasefire between us. She's arranged an escape room night with me, her, and 2 of the receptive friends next weekend. She thought it might be a fun middle ground. It's not an outdoors thing, and it's not a club. We'll see how we all get along. I don't think this is going to be fixed quickly, but we're willing to try. Update 2. My M27 fiancé's F26 friends are constantly trying to break us up and she won't put a stop to it. I think I've pretty much had enough. Probably my last update on this situation before I delete this throwaway. I know a lot of you are saying that my fiancé is choosing her friends over me, or that she's not taking responsibility, or that she's putting it all on me. I get what you're saying. I really do, but she is trying. She hates making waves, wants everyone to be happy, and is trying to please everyone, but that strategy just doesn't work. It's hard for her to stick up for herself, but she's trying. I can tell she is. As long as she's trying, I'll try. So anyway, in case anyone is interested in our escape night, it was okay. Not great, not miserable, but okay. I think I can compare it to some corporate team building exercise with coworkers you really don't like. Sure, you can have fun doing it and maybe even get along with them for a while, but at the end of the day, you're really not interested in being friends with them outside of work. That's how this whole thing felt. The escape room itself was fun. We solved the room with just under 10 minutes left. Certainly not a record-breaking time, but the main thing is we got out. No real conflict, we all stayed pretty chill. The 4 of us did dinner together afterwards and talked for a while. Again, it was fine. Her friends and I don't have much in common, so there's not a lot to talk about. So, we discussed some of the puzzles from the escape room before moving on to our upcoming wedding. The main thing is that the beer was cold and the food was warm, so I was happy. My fiancé was pretty pleased about how the night went. I guess it went as good as it could. Her friends and I spent a few hours together and didn't fight or insult each other, so that's a win. I don't see any of us becoming good friends, but maybe being civil to each other is the first step and maybe the best we can hope for. I didn't want to be on her parade, but I did remind her it was just one night. You could say I'm still pretty skeptical about the whole thing, but I guess we'll wait and see. I asked my fiancée what's going to happen if her friends don't stop interfering in our lives, and she said she'd need to start dropping bridesmaids. I'll guess we'll see about that too. Anyway, all I know is neither of us wants this drama to continue, and since it looks like my fiancée is finally taking steps to put her foot down and stand up for herself and us, I'll stand with her too. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My adoptive family lied and had family heirlooms from me. My adoptive parents lied to me and my birth mom about the conditions of my adoption and had family heirlooms for me. Advice wanted. Not sure if this belongs in this sub, but I really need advice. A bit of backstory first. I, 25, have a younger brother, 23, and we were both adopted from birth from separate birth parents. My parents tried to have children of their own, but after 3 attempts were unsuccessful and went the route of adoption instead. We found out when we were young that we were adopted, but we weren't concerned with learning about our birth families at the time, so we didn't push for information. As we've grown older, I've become more interested in my history and heritage, but haven't questioned my adoptive parents about it, because I was concerned it would hurt their feelings. I have never gotten along super well with my adoptive parents, and since I've come out as a member of the LGBT community, our relationship has become a lot more strained. My relationship with my brother isn't much better, as he physically and emotionally abused me through our childhood, which my parents didn't stop or punish. Within the last few years, I, 25, discovered that I have a half-sister and have since open communication with her and my bio mom, 50. What started as casually talking turned into a discussion about my adoption process, and I've learned some worrying things. According to my bio mom, my adoptive mom swore that I would be adopted into their family as an only child because of their losses and a desire to have just one child to raise. My bio mom wanted to make sure I would be given to parents who were going to take care of me and use this as a factor. 2 years later, my brother was adopted into the family. It's also been said that I was sent off with a variety of items to show for my family, including several heirlooms, a handmade ring to match my bio mom's letters from everyone in the family, and a scrapbook with pictures of everyone in the family. She also informed me of some of my family medical history, including that we have a history of depression, ADHD, bipolar disorder, and several other mental illnesses running in the family, all of which I have been diagnosed with at a late stage in my life. I have not seen any of this stuff existing and feel that I really could have benefited from knowing my medical history early on so I could get treated right away. I'm really bothered by the fact that after 25 years I had to hear that this was held for me by my birth mom. If I hadn't reconnected with her, I don't think I'd ever have found out. I want to know what happened to these belongings and why this was hidden from me, but I don't know how to begin asking about it. My brother was told early on that his bio parents wanted nothing to do with him, and although we never got along, I'm not going to spit in his face by straight up asking in front of him. I have a feeling that he has at least a small part in why it was hidden. I'm not saying that it was his fault, of course, but that he was just a factor, since he would have wondered why he never got anything from his bio family, but I did. My brother and I have honestly gotten a lot closer since we've left our parents' house, and I try not to hold anything against him for past mistakes, so I don't want to accidentally hurt him while asking about this. I'm really confused, and this is eating away at me. Please, if anyone has any suggestions for me, I'm open to hearing them. I have an appointment with my therapist and plan to talk to her, but that's not for several weeks, and I could really use advice from a third party. Thanks. Edit. I know there's a good chance that my adoptive parents are likely lying to my brother as well, and I'm trying to come up with good ways to open up the discussion with him. I just don't want to say anything to him that might hurt him unintentionally or close him off to the ideas of bringing it up with our adoptive parents. Small update. I asked my brother if he would be interested in doing a DNA test like 23 and me with me to open up a conversation about things, and he agreed, so it's just a matter of figuring out when. I'll post a better update once I have a talk with him. Update 1. My adoptive parents lie to me and my birth mom about the conditions of my adoption and his family heirlooms from me. In short, I, 25, have recently been in contact with my biological mother, 50s, and half-sister, 21. I was adopted at birth because my bio mom didn't have the money to take care of me at the time. As we've gotten to know each other, she told me about various items such as photos, letters, gifts, and family heirlooms that she had gifted me before I was adopted. Needless to say, I never received these items, which really hurt. I ended up asking my ad mom, 58, about it when I went to visit her and my adoptive dad, 65, for Christmas. It went about as well as expected. She started off by claiming she had no idea what I was talking about, and that she didn't remember anything being sent with me. Luckily, my bio mom had a picture of the gift basket she had sent as well as details of other items she'd sent over the years, and I had taken a picture of it. When I showed her the picture, she proceeded to say that she had no idea where it would be and that it was probably misplaced or lost. When we moved homes when I was younger, everything was probably gone by now. I told her that I had located or recognized a few of the items in the basket, such as a couple of stuffed animals and a Bible for kids which she had passed off as coming from other relatives when I was little. For example, a teddy bear that was in the basket came from my maternal grandmother, not my bio mom. The piece that I really wanted was a beautiful scrapbook that my bio had made for me, which I begged her to find. She claimed she had no idea where it would be, but I'm convinced that this is a lie. The reason I believe that is because I have recently come out as non-binary and have since changed my name, which my adoptive parents have only recently accepted. She found the book in a box with a bunch of other baby stuff that was labeled with my chosen name, meaning that she knew where it was and didn't plan on sharing it with me. She finally ended up saying that the reason she didn't give me the stuff and say who it was from was because of my brother. He was adopted from a different family, and his mother made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with him, which our adoptive parents told us both about early on. Apparently, he'd constantly scope out the house looking for things from his bio family, which I don't really believe, which was why they hid my stuff. She also claimed that because I never asked about my bio family, she assumed I didn't care about it and wouldn't have wanted to know. However, I would have loved to know more about my bio family, but I felt that asking would be a slap to the face for them, so I never did. Considering my mom's reactions to me questioning her lies, I'd say that was a fair assumption. She kept insisting that she'd never intentionally lie to me or hide things from me, even though that's exactly what she did for years. There is still a lot of new information. I'm learning more and more things that they've been lying to me about, but that's another story. I am frustrated and beginning to accept that my parents had the items for me to make it seem as though my own adoptive mother didn't want me. After all, my brother's parents didn't want him, so I couldn't have been wanted either. In order to keep me from asking questions about my bio family, they had to pretend that they didn't exist in the first place. I don't know where to go from here. There are still things from my past that are missing, such as a jewelry set that my bio mom had gifted me to match her own set, as well as other pieces of information that I know they kept secret from me. I am just so tired. Any advice would be extremely helpful. Edit. Thanks to everyone who's gifted awards and sent kind comments my way. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to cover a couple of things that a few people have asked me about. To start, yes, I do have a therapist who knows the situation and she has been helping me work through my emotions, but it's still very stressful and difficult to deal with. I've still got a ways to go before I figured things out. For those who mention that the gifts I've been given are just objects that I shouldn't get attached to, I get what you're saying, but that isn't really the point. Yes, it hurts that they've kept these things from me, but the real problem is that decades of lying and secret keeping that they've committed. I can live without the items, but knowing that they were so capable of lying right to my face is what hurts the most. I am going to continue forging my relationship with my bio family, but I can't really cut contact with my adopted family right now. My mom is currently on my home's lease. It's complicated, but she is helping me pay for my apartment and can't exactly cut contact with her or my father for that reason. I'm just trying to limit contact when possible, though it's difficult. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.